You're listening to an Anderson Entertainment production.
This episode,
we find a big red book in our search for a FAB Fact.
We're playing dangerous games in the Randomiser.
and we celebrate 100 pods with 2 special features.
That's all coming up in Pod 100
of the Gerry Anderson Podcast!
Let's get started. Let's go.
Spectrum is green.
The Gerry Anderson Podcast with Jamie Anderson and Richard James.
Jamie!
Richard James.
Oh, Jamie Anderson! It's so
the
exciting.
Gerry Anderson Podcast.
Yeah!
Pod 100.
100! We made it! Can we stop now?
We probably should, yeah. Anyway, that's all from us, listeners. Thanks for listening in. Goodbye.
100 pods. I mean, I think we've got to be all quite proud of ourselves, really, haven't we? The listeners, those of us on the team that make the thing, Chris, Laura, Tim in the store, big shout out to Tim.
Yes, Chris, AC, and Ross, who does the audiograms to make sure that those of you who are listening on YouTube can actually listen on YouTube every week.
That's right. Gosh, there we are.
Thanks, everyone.
We've done it. We can relax now. It's all downhill from now on.
It will be. Well, I mean, I think this is probably going to be our longest ever podcast by the looks of things, because we've got some crazy stuff coming up.
We have.
So, well, Richard, what can our Podsterons look forward to in the next 100 hours of this 100th pod of the Gerry Anderson Podcast?
It's going to feel like it, I think. Well, we're doing similar things, but we're giving things a little tweak to celebrate our 100th pod. For example, I think Chris Dale this week has got a randomiser, of course, to sit down in front of.
Well, that's nothing new, is it? That's the same as
But,
always.
Jamie, you haven't let me finish.
Oh, sorry.
He's also bringing us a special feature, The Genesis of Thunderbirds, featuring archive footage with your dad, of course. How appropriate that he should be joining us on our 100th pod, isn't that nice?
Yes,
and also,
better late than never.
That's true. Going into a little about the origins of the idea of Thunderbirds, how it came to Gerry, and then moving into the production of the series itself. A really fascinating item coming up a little later on, alongside Chris's usual randomiser a little later. Instead of our interview this week, Jamie...
Yes, Richard.
I thought it might be quite nice to look back over our previous 100 pods, well, 99 pods, and pick out some carefully curated moments from all our wonderful guests and interviewees. So I've actually chosen 15 of our guests to look back over and hear from a little later on as well. How does that sound?
Wow. Thank you for doing that. That's very good of you.
Now, on top of all that, we've got Gerry Anderson news. I know, just because we're having our 100th pod, the news doesn't stop. So we've got some Gerry Anderson news coming up a little later on. And I suppose we ought to do Fab Facts for old time's sake.
Yes.
Right. And also, of course, we have got the answer and the winner of the Plot of Peril that I set way back in Pod 95. I suspect it's going to be the last outing for this particular feature.
Well, that's a shame, but, the swan song, I'm sure, will be a good one.
We'll go out in
Possibly.
style. There we are. So all that coming up in the Gerry Anderson Podcast.
We've also, Richard, oh my goodness, mate, we've also got an experimental feature. So, listeners, if you're listening right now on the Gerry Anderson website or via our Captivate player, then after Fab Facts, you will be able to interact live, sort of, with the podcast by answering a question. So stay tuned for that and have your mouse or finger at the ready to give us an answer to a question, which I shall be posing later on.
Great. Now, Jamie.
Goodness me.
On top of all that...
What?
I know.
There's no more room on top. The thing's already about to topple over.
We've got to make room, I'm afraid, because as I think it was McFly said many years ago, it's all about you, listeners. We asked you to send in your audio files.
What a reference.
And you have done in your droves. So we will be coming to you throughout the pod and hearing your thoughts about the Gerry Anderson Podcast and what it means to you. For example...
Hi everyone, Mark Wilson here. I just wanted to say a huge congratulations on 100 pods.
And a general thank you to everyone involved in bringing us the podcast every Monday. Believe it or not, it really is one of the highlights of my week. Thank you to all of us for creating this weird and wonderful group called the Podsterons. I truly believe it is one of the best things to come out of this whole experience so far. On a personal note, I'm not one of the most sociable people in this world. Being part of this group has really allowed me to interact with other fans like myself, share some stories, make some new friends, etc. It really has brought out a whole new side of me. Even recording this audio message, I wouldn't have had the confidence to do before. I even took part in one of the quizzes that Willow and Abby have been running on a Saturday night. It was so nice to be part of something like that, seeing everyone talking and having a great time. So hopefully I'll be able to participate in more things like that in the future. Let's hope Fab World gets the go-ahead this year and we can all get together and share the experience again, as last year was great. And I was planning on bringing Stingray Seth with me this year. That's my eldest son, for those of you that don't know. He's still very much into Stingray and Thunderbirds. Maybe some more lemon drizzle cake for you, Richard, from Mummy Wilson. Anyway, so here's to the next 100 pods. Take care, everyone. Stay safe, and FAB.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Mark.
Yes, great to hear from you, and we'll be hearing from lots of other listeners throughout the podcast.
Wow,
hey.
I can't believe how much stuff is happening. So we should probably not gabble on too much. We sort of introduced ourselves, and it's Pod 100, so everybody knows what it is anyway. So should we get on with one of the most popular segments of the podcast in this household, at least?
Yes, go on.
Fab Facts.
Okay, go on then.
Now, time for this week's Fab Facts.
Well, it's in fact, we didn't start at the very beginning, did we? So it's a certain numbered edition of Fab Facts, but it is the Fab Facts for our 100th podcast.
Yeah.
So how that goes is I've got a book of Fab Facts here. I'm going to flick through the book of Fab Facts. Richard shouts Fab at a random point, and on the page that we stop, hopefully there's a Fab Fact, and we discuss it. Isn't that fun? So I'm going to grab my book, Richard.
Jamie,
here we go.
That's how it goes normally.
What?
Yeah. That's normally how it goes. You flick through the book and I shout Fab, but for the 100th podcast, I'm going to mix it up a bit.
No, what?
Look what I've got here. I've got my
Where'd
own
you get that from?
book of amazing Fab Facts. I've been saving it.
Okay.
Yeah? So, I'm going to...
Is it good though? I'm a bit worried about how fab your facts are.
Well, I think you've been setting the bar pretty low, Jamie. I think I'll be all right.
Fine, all right, well, let's see.
Okay, I'm going to flick through the book, Jamie, and you're going to shout Fab, and then I'm going to stop and read out the relevant facts, and we will see just how fab it is. Are you ready?
As I'll ever be. Fab!
Oh, right. Now this is a nice one, actually. Now, you are familiar, of course, with Stingray.
Yes, in fact, I just watched the pilot episode on BritBox.
Yes, of course. But do you remember the clip show episode called Aquanaut of the Year?
Oh, who doesn't love a clip show?
Yes. Now, this particular episode saw Troy Tempest become the subject of This Is Your Life. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, this was a real-life, long-running series in which unsuspecting celebrities would be ambushed by the This Is Your Life presenter. I think it ran in the US and the UK. And then they were taken off to a studio where friends, family and colleagues were waiting to celebrate their life and work. It was a hugely popular series shown throughout the world. And over the years, several notable Gerry Anderson names appeared on the UK version. So we had people like Gabriel Drake.
Oh, yes.
Bob Monkhouse.
I watched that one. I've seen that one.
Paul Jones, Stephanie Beacham. But the most Anderson noteworthy This Is Your Life edition was aired on March the 20th, 1974, and it focused on Roy Dotrice.
Oh,
now,
yes.
Why do you know Roy Dotrice?
Well, he was Commissioner Simmons in Space 1999, and in fact left the show in a rather grim way, didn't he? Where he tried to get back to Earth and was trapped awake in a box which would become his coffin.
Yes.
How cheering.
Yes.
Anyway,
back to
less cheery than that.
Well, actually, Eamon Andrews, who was the host of the show, actually surprised Roy Dotrice on the Space 1999 set during the production of the episode Earthbound.
Oh, that episode?
Which you've just been talking about. The big reveal was made during a specially written scene in which Simmons is staring out of the window on the upper level of main mission. He then gets called down by Paul and Sandra. Prentice Hancock and Xenia Merton were in on the surprise, apparently, to look at something on one of the small monitors underneath main mission's big screen.
Aww.
So you can imagine, Roy comes all the way down the stairs across main mission to look at his monitor, which says,
sweet.
Roy Dotrice, this is your life.
Amazing.
On the screen. But, unfortunately, Roy didn't have his glasses on. And because this wasn't in the script, he didn't know what was going on until Eamon Andrews appeared from behind him, carrying the big red book. Isn't that cool?
Oh, wow. Oh, but all that effort gone. And then he didn't even...
Yeah. So this episode aired 18 months before Space 1999 debuted on British television, so may well have been the public's first sight of the show. But sadly, the episode is believed to no longer exist in the archives, although there are plenty of pictures of the shoot on the Blu-rays. So there you go. There. What do you think of that?
What a shame that doesn't exist, that clip. Because that would be great to see. A bit of, a different approach to seeing main mission and see that magical moment not happen.
Absolutely. I mean, you say it doesn't exist, but I bet someone's got it somewhere. I bet someone's got a reel of film in their attic and they probably don't even know that they picked up from a car boot sale or something. And it'll be there. Imagine that.
Well, if any of you Podsterons know of this clip, if you, happen to think, I've got a load of This Is Your Life stuff from the 70s, I wonder if it's in there.
Yeah.
I mean, what a lovely thing, what a lovely find that would be.
Oh, hang on a minute. Oh, Jamie, what's the man with a big red book coming up to my front door? I can't believe it.
What?
Oh, no, it's the bailiffs. Oh dear. I think we better crack on with this then.
Bolt the door, quick.
Anyway, how did I fare on the old Fab Facts?
I think you did pretty well. That's a pretty interesting Fab Fact.
Okay.
I would definitely rate it Fab on the Fab Fact scale. So,
job done.
Well done, Richard.
Thank you very much.
I'm very impressed.
Brings us to the end of this week's This Is Your Fact. Gosh, I remember that music so well.
Wow, voices of angels there.
So there you go. Probably my one and only turn at reading out a Fab Fact from my amazing book of Fab Facts.
Well, it's best to go out on a high, isn't it?
It's true.
And if you can't do that, then I'll have to do.
Thank you very much. You're listening to the Gerry Anderson Podcast. Don't forget you can subscribe to us on whichever platform you're listening to us on, and you can leave us a rating if you'd be so kind. Give us a little star rating, tell us what you think of the show, and also share us with your friends so they can get to hear us too. That would be splendid.
Please do. Now, if you're listening to us on the Gerry Anderson website or via the Captivate player, now is your chance to interact with the podcast live. Oh. Well, live as you listen to it.
Yes.
So, here comes this week's question. And if you're listening in the right place, you should get some options coming up any time now to answer this question. In what decade did you, dear listener, dear Podsteron, first see your very first Gerry Anderson show? Was it A, in the 1960s or prior, B, in the 1970s, C, in the 1980s, or D, the 1990s or later? You should be able to click on your answer now. Thank you very much for answering that question, and now we'll carry on with the podcast.
Wow, that was weird.
I know, but it won't work for most people on iTunes or Apple Podcasts or Spotify or whatever, but if you're listening on the Captivate player, thank you for doing that.
Yeah, great. So we don't we have that thing drop down in front of our face every time we do that, do we? Because that was really annoying. Those options.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, I couldn't see it for a moment. Anyway, now people have also been getting in touch with us via email, of course. They've been sending their messages and questions to podcast@gerryanderson.co.uk, like Emma Nichols, for example, who says...
Hi, Emma.
Yeah, she says, hi, Jamie and Richard. 2 questions. 1, when is Fab Live coming back? As my friends keep on asking me about it. And 2, I was wondering if I could get a shout out to my mother, Sheila Nichols, who is listening and has very kindly let me be an Anderson insider, because she said, Emma, if you sign up to it, I'll pay for it. I mean, fab parenting right there.
Yeah, fab parenting. Thank you, Sheila. Hello, Sheila. Hello, Emma.
That's right.
Yes, lovely.
So, Fab Live. Well, I mean, there's a question.
Well, are we not doing a special Fab Live tonight, Richard? Tonight on the night of release, that being the 11th of May.
Are we going to mention that now, are we?
Well, I feel like we should, because she's asked, and it'd be weird not to.
Okay.
So,
how's that going to happen then?
Well, we're not entirely sure yet, but we will have worked it out by, what did we say, 6 p.m. on the 11th of May?
Yeah,
is that what we were aiming for? Okay, so 6 p.m. You sure?
Yeah, okay, yeah. I can eat afterwards.
You sure?
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, okay. 6 p.m. on the 11th of May.
Yep.
That's UK time, 6 p.m. on the Gerry Anderson Facebook page, hopefully, and the Gerry Anderson YouTube channel, and probably on Twitch and Periscope as well.
Yeah.
We will be doing a very special short Fab Live.
Yes.
Using some brand new tech. So it's bound to go wrong.
Of course it is.
And obviously we're in lockdown, so Richard and I would be doing it remotely from one another. So who knows if it'll actually work, but we're doing it to celebrate 100th podcast. So if you are listening and it's before 6 p.m. on the 11th of May, then head over at 6 p.m. to join us somewhere where we do video stuff, and hopefully you'll be able to see us. Now, if you're going to watch us on Facebook, then in order to have your comments show up, you have to pre-authorize the system that we're using. It's all very complicated, isn't it?
Yeah.
So if you're going to watch us on Facebook, go to StreamYard.com streamyard.com/Facebook. That's streamyard.com/Facebook, and just authorise StreamYard to access your comments. It doesn't, give it any control over your Facebook page. It just means that we can see your comments, and if we pick them to be answered, we can show them on the screen.
Right. Good.
There you go. So
wow. Now I can see why this is going to be a 100-hour 100th podcast.
I know, it's going on and on, isn't it? Right. So, yes, Fab Live special edition for the 100th podcast, 11th of May, 6 p.m. And if you've missed it, you can go back and watch it, but just not interact. And then we may use that as a template to do more Fab Lives in the future. Let's see.
Yes.
Who knows?
How very exciting.
Okay.
Great.
I'll stop talking.
Terry S. here has written from California saying, hello, everyone, at T-Gap. Yeah.
T-Gap.
Like
Thank you, TS.
Terry says, this comes to say congratulations on the milestone, some would say millstone, Terry, of the 100th Gerry Anderson podcast. Every week, Jamie and Richard and company bring us fans all around the world, all the latest Andersonian happenings, plus guests, games and surprises. It's almost like he's been listening. It continues to amaze just how many people from so many different life's pursuits grew up with and continue to be positively influenced by Mr. Anderson's unique creative legacy. Jamie, most especially, surely has every reason in this world or any other to feel proud. I do respectfully hope so. Here's raising my favourite Stingray Blue Ander mug, raised on Super Marination, to continued success. Thank you, Terry.
Cheers. I'm raising my pink mug at this very moment.
Right, I think it's about time then that we heard from another listener. Now, this is James Pilson Wood, who's got a question for each of us.
Oh.
Hi, gents. Hope you are all doing okay and staying safe. I thought I'd submit some questions for the 100th podcast episode. Congratulations, by the way. Jamie, the rights to your father's creations must be worth some large sums of money. Does Anderson Entertainment own any of the rights to your father's works? And would there ever be a plan in place to try and recapture some of those ownership rights in the future? Richard, if you could go back in time and change one acting decision, which one would it be and why? Chris, watching so much Anderson Entertainment programs, do you ever feel you get oversaturated with it and have to start watching anything else? Like, what would be your visual entertainment palate cleanser? Stay safe, guys. Appreciate everything you do. Bye.
Thanks, James. Okay, well, we've got some questions there, Jamie, so I like that. If I could go back in time and change one acting decision, what would it be?
Saying yes to doing the podcast?
Do you know, I can't think of a single thing. I've enjoyed everything I've done. I think I've been, so far, lucky in my career so far. I mean, what it's going to be after all this, I've no idea. But I just think I got lucky. I've worked with some amazing people, made some great friends, had some brilliant experiences. TV, film, stage, radio, I've done it all. I can't say there's one thing I regret doing. So I'm sorry if that disappoints you.
Well, it's always nice to hear a bit of, upset or misery, but you're not providing it today.
No, sorry about that, yeah. And Jamie, so he asked, does Anderson Entertainment own any of the rights to your father's work?
Yes.
Yeah.
Otherwise we wouldn't be able to do things like Terrorhawks and putting out Dick Spanner and New Captain Scarlet and and many others, and developing other bits and pieces in the background and things like 5 Star 5 and Operation Shockwave and Star Cruiser and Into Infinity. I mean, the list actually goes on and on and on. Yeah. There's loads of stuff there. Yeah. So, yes, if we didn't, it would make life a lot more difficult.
It would certainly make for a much shorter podcast, wouldn't it?
It would perhaps. Should we get rid of it all and just...
just
anyway,
have a quick chat. And over to
Chris
your answer. To hear his answer. What exactly would be his palate cleanser?
Hello, James. Thank you for your question. And the answer really is... Well, I do, and I don't. If that makes any sense, watching a random episode once a week is, it kind of keeps it fresh because I've not watched the whole Gerry Anderson canon in one go like this in a random order before. My viewing habits tend to be, I don't watch too much like current TV. I tend to live off of older TV box sets and things. So I will watch a series or a season of an old show and then move on to something else. This year, I haven't been watching too much Anderson separate from the Randomiser. In fact, I don't think I've watched any. I do have a hankering to give the original Captain Scarlet a bit of a rewatch soon. I think last year I rewatched Thunderbirds, possibly Space Precinct, and the tail end of Joe 90 on Blu-ray. I can normally give shows a rewatch if it's an anniversary year, so I might be giving Terrorhawks a bit of a rewatch later on this year for 2020. But when I'm not watching whatever box set I've got on at the moment, I also have a Friday night Doctor Who slot, which a classic Doctor Who, of course. This week it's going to be The Caves of Androzani, and Saturday night, normally a Mystery Science Theatre or a Riff Tracks or something like that. Otherwise, I just stick with whatever I'm watching on the box set at the moment, which at the moment is a show of equal violence and death and destruction and misery to the original Captain Scarlet. I'm rewatching The Animals of Farthing Wood. I'm on halfway through the first season of that at the moment. At the time I'm recording this, the baby mice have just been impaled on the thorns. So there we go. That's a little insight into my viewing habits. I must say I am a sucker for a network sale. I've got so many TV box sets. Just looking at the cupboard beside me here, I've got things like... Well, I've got a lot of 60s, 70s things. I've got The Invaders, which I haven't watched. I've got Callan, which I haven't watched. Star Maidens, which I have watched. Public Eye, The Power Game, which I've watched more than once. Doom Watch. If it's 60s, 70s, bit of 80s, I'm all over it. But it does mean I have a lot of box sets that I haven't watched yet. But the Anderson things are, no matter how many times I see them, and I could probably quote, the entire script for Trapped in the Sky or Breakaway or The Mysterons right now, it never gets boring for me, I don't think, no. I'm always spotting new things in these shows, and that's part of the fun of going back to them, is the familiarity, but also just marvelling at the continued level of skill and fun of so many of these old shows. They're just great fun. They all hold up really well. I don't tend to rewatch the black and white stuff so much. I think it's probably about 10 years since I've given Supercar or Fireball a full rewatch. Part of me sort of holds out hope that maybe there'll be an HD release soon. That's one of the reasons I would love to sit and watch Stingray, but I know that as soon as I've done it, they'll announce the Blu-rays finally, and it'll be like, oh, I wasted my time. But no, it never gets boring for me rewatching the shows. And so I really like having the Randomiser to have an outlet to comment on some of the things that I've spotted over the years. And sometimes I find myself watching an episode and think, oh, I'd like to talk about that on the Randomiser. And then I realise, oh wait, I've actually done that one already. So I'm still finding things in these shows that I've never seen before. And hopefully in the coming years, decades even, I'll still be finding more. So thank you for your question, and cheery bye.
Well, there's your answer, James. Thank you, Chris.
Yes, thank you very much for sending that in. We'll hear some more audio files from our lovely listeners a little later on.
Wow. Richard, we are already nearly half an hour into this Gerry Anderson Podcast Pod 100, and we haven't even hit the news, let alone any of the features.
I know.
We should get straight into the news, shouldn't we?
Yeah, come on then.
Okay, Gerry Anderson News, here we go. How do you introduce the news for the 100th then?
Well, I think people are just waiting for the usual thing, aren't they? I mean, I can feel the tension building. I think I'm just going to...
Do you have to say it 100 times, though, don't you?
I'm just going to say, newsy news.
That's only 4. Can you do that 25 more times? Or 24 more times for the 100th? No?
No, not right now. No.
Okay, fine. Well, would you believe it? For the 100th, there's loads of Gerry Anderson news, so I'm going to not rush through it, but I'm going to push through it fairly swiftly.
Okay.
First up in the news is a hint of something to come.
Oh.
Podsterons. I think you should keep an ear out for some Anderson news coming around the 20th of May.
Oh.
Stay tuned to all Gerry Anderson social media and web channels.
Wow.
And,
is this something new or something old? Or
Richard, you know exactly what it is because you may possibly have been involved. But yes, it'll be something to make you all happy and keep you entertained, I think. So, yeah, stand by for action. that's that bit.
Great.
Gerry Anderson stuff is on BritBox, as we know.
Yes.
Now, I think last week you reminded me after the news, because I'd forgotten to put it in the news, that they were going to have 10 episodes of Thunderbirds and the pilots of Captain Scarlet and Joe 90 and Stingray. Well, the BritBox press release was incorrect, it turns out. Not only have they got those, but they've also got the pilots of Supercar 5XL5 and the All About Thunderbirds documentary.
Wowzers.
Yeah, so you can go onto BritBox in the UK and subscribe for 30 days for free, and that gives you plenty of time to watch all the shows. Now, I've heard, unfortunately, that the Thunderbirds masters they've used are the cropped 16:9 versions. Before you ask, no, we can't do anything about it. We can't pull any strings. I've had several tweets about that already.
Of course you have, yes.
I don't know why ITV insist on using those masters, but they do, so we're stuck with it, but at least it's there. So, yeah, there we are. Now, if you're outside the UK, I can hear your frustration. It's palpable. But if you're in the US, there are 2 streaming services where you can access a load of Anderson stuff for free. In fact, more than we've got on BritBox.
Really?
So, yes, Shout Factory and Tubi both have loads of Anderson stuff available for free because they're AVOD platforms, so ad revenue supported. So just go over to shoutfactory.tv, I think, and you can watch as much Anderson stuff as you please there.
Great.
Same for Tubi. So there you go. Outside of those, I'm sorry, I don't know really what the state of play is for streaming stuff. If you're in Australia, then it might be worth sending a tweet or an email to Stan, which is the streaming service out there, run by Nine, I think. And if you're elsewhere in the world, then yes, just email your streamer of choice and say, I want Anderson stuff. But I'm really hoping in time BritBox will become the home for all Gerry Anderson stuff, and perhaps they'll carry Terrorhawks and Dick Spanner and New Captain Scarlet and everything else. But let's see. We're here if you want us, BritBox.
Great, absolutely.
On the making front, we've received tens of entries already for our hashtag Tracy Island Make competition.
Oh, good.
So if you go to the Gerry Anderson website, you'll see a link there for our Tracy Island Make competition, something you can do on your own with the kids. Doesn't matter who makes it, really, but you can follow the original Blue Peter instructions, or you can make up your own Tracy Island. Just make it a physical one. I'm afraid we're not accepting CGI entries for this. This is a tangible, using rubbish materials around you.
Great.
I almost couldn't find the word there. Yeah, absolutely we do. So yes, it's got to be a physical entry, but it can be as creative as you like. Send your photos into tracyislandmake at gerryanderson.co.uk before the end of the month, and winners will be announced in early June with the top prize, £250 worth of stuff from the Gerry Anderson store. Nice. There you go. As we mentioned last week, a load of Thunderbirds books previously published in the late 2000s, early 2010s, from Joan Marie Verber have arrived. The first book in the series has sold out, but don't worry, we've got a few more arriving week after next.
Oh, good.
But if you want to pick up that collection, they're available now, but they are in short supply and they will disappear before we know it. It's very Thunderbirds heavy, this episode.
That's okay. We like
sometimes that happens.
Yeah.
If you are in the UK or anywhere around the world and you would like to support NHS charities which are helping to support the heroes of the NHS, of which there are thousands who are helping us cope with this crazy situation we find ourselves in, then there is a special website, helpournhsheroes.com, and there is a special range of Thunderbirds t-shirts and mugs, special designs that have been come up with for this particular crazy time we're living through, and all profits from the sales of those items will go to NHS charities around the UK. I've looked into the books as to what these guys are doing. It's not our initiative, it's a third party, but it really is. All profits go to the NHS. They're not doing that crafty thing where they keep a little bit back for themselves, which some people do. So pop along there. There's some great designs. There's a Brains design, Thunderbird 5 gag on self-isolating, all sorts of stuff. So pop along. Help our NHS heroes. That's heroes, HEROES.com. And you'll see a link to the Thunderbirds collection on the front page there. If you'd like to do some reading about Gerry Anderson toys, then the fourth part... I know there's more and more news.
Keeps coming,
The fourth part of Chris Dale's fantastic Gerry Anderson Toys series, the fourth and final part, is out now on the Gerry Anderson website, gerryanderson.co.uk. Chris has also turned out a rather fantastic couple of Eagle crashes videos on the YouTube channel, documenting every Eagle crashed and lost throughout Space 1999, Series 1.
Yes, I watched that last night. Hilarious.
It's great, isn't it?
Yes.
I believe Series 2 is now up and available. If not, it'll be next week. And finally,
Come on,
to try and
big
keep
breath.
you entertained beyond this ridiculously long 100-hour podcast, we are also releasing free episodes of various Gerry Anderson shows on our Facebook page. They will be premiering every Friday for the next few weeks. Terrorhawks 2 for the price of one has already screened last week or the week before. It'll be a couple of new Captain Scarlet episodes now, I should think. So pop along to facebook.com/Gerry Anderson Official. We're aiming for 6:30 on a Friday night. So
Cool.
good time to, crack open a beer or pour yourself a glass of wine or
glass of squash.
pop or squash or whatever you like, and enjoy some free entertainment. That's it, I think. Have you got anything else? I've always missed something.
How can I top that? No, nothing at all. Nothing to add.
Good. Okay, good.
You'd be relieved to hear.
Right, that is our special 100th edition of the Gerry Anderson News.
That was the news. 100th news.
Beautiful.
Now,
Goodness me, Richard. I can't believe we haven't even got to a feature yet, and we are several hours in.
Well, we
already.
did warn them, didn't we? I think that's fine.
I know, but I'm not sure I warned myself enough.
Now, quite apart from the audio files, some more of which are coming up in just a moment, we've had some emails and also people have been tweeting us. Now, Jamie, do you remember last time we had a question that someone had spotted, an eagle-eyed viewer, from The Chase, where the question was, who designed the Thunderbird car? And the answer given was Gerry Anderson. And we were wondering, well, no, who did actually make the Thunderbird? Not the FAB Rolls-Royce, as you thought it might be, but who made the Thunderbirds? I suggested Ford. Well, I'm delighted to say I was right.
Well done, you.
Yeah. Megan, for example, got in touch on Twitter and said, re-podcast 99, Ford was the manufacturer of the Thunderbird motor car, and Jay agreed, saying, when the Beach Boys sang, and she'll have fun, fun, fun till her daddy takes her T-Bird away, they were singing about the Ford Thunderbird. So there you go. So thank you very much for that. Right, let's have a bumper crop of audio files from our lovely listeners. How about a terrible trio?
Hi guys, this is Paul Hyder. Being fairly remote here in China, the podcast is one of the only ways I've got of keeping in touch with the Gerry Anderson world. So thank you and congratulations on getting to Pod 100.
Hello all, Simpsons Clips 24 here, and I'd like to say that it's thanks to the Gerry Anderson podcast that I was able to discover new worlds, meet new friends, and accomplish my dream of writing for children's television. So thank you Richard, Jamie and Chris, and here's to the next 100 pods.
Hello, Richard and Jamie. Congratulations on reaching 100 pods. Chris Garrard here. Or is it Gerard? Anyway, fantastic news. Great milestone. Loved every episode. May it continue. Bring on the guests. Well done, gentlemen. Take care. Stay safe. God bless. Bye.
Lovely. And hardly terrible, I'd say a terrific trio.
A terrific trio. Yes, there we are. Thank you very much. That's Paul and Simpsons Clips 24 and Chris Garrard. Garage. I don't know.
We've already covered this in a previous pod, Richard. Don't be mean.
Sorry.
Wow, this is crazy. I can't believe all these lovely messages coming in. Thank you, all of you who've emailed podcast@gerryanderson.co.uk. I mean, just because we're crossing over to Pod 101 next week doesn't mean that
you should stop.
You should stop. Please carry on, and please make sure you're leaving us reviews and ratings and all that sort of stuff wherever you want to do it. Should we have a feature now? I mean,
well, I think it's about time, isn't it?
Okay, fine. So, well, Richard, you've created this feature. So,
yes.
Do you want to introduce it?
To mark our 100th podcast, I thought rather than have an interview this week, we should look back to our previous guests. Maybe you've not heard all our 100 pods, in which case we'd hate you to miss out. So here's a reminder of just some of the people we've spoken to over the last couple of years. As you'll hear, they range from actors who voiced many of your favourite characters, to those who worked behind the scenes, to celebrity fans who just love the world of Gerry Anderson and wanted to tell us all about it. First up, let's go back to the beginning. Pod 2, in fact, where Jamie met with actor Sophia Myles, who played Lady Penelope in the live-action Thunderbirds movie from 2004, and she spoke rather candidly about the film's checkered reputation.
We made this film for children. And in actual fact, if you ask anyone that was between the ages of... Actually, I met somebody the other day that was 3 years old and just had it on a loop track. And loved it. But if you ask any child between the ages of, I would say, 3 and 13, maybe 14, who hadn't had the original as part of their lives, or it wasn't imprinted in their consciousness the way that it is for, men in their now 30s, I guess, onwards. The children that saw it absolutely loved it and had it on repeat. But I do understand, having seen the original and being a fan of the original, I can completely understand where the diehards were coming from, because I would say, and I'm not blowing smoke up my own bottom, but apart from, I think, the portrayal that Ron Cook, who played Parker, and myself gave, I don't feel that the rest of the cast kind of really resonated or brought something to the table that had at least an essence of the original. And I tried, I went back and watched a lot of the originals, and I thought, right, well, how can I honour that, but equally at the same time make it current and make it accessible in this day and age for the younger generation. So I thought I didn't want to do an impersonation of what Sylvia had done. But I wanted at least to kind of give a flavour. And I think if I'd done the full-on kind of 1960, that very, very clipped kind of accent, I don't think it would have been quite so accessible for kids.
No, I agree.
But I know, so your dad didn't watch it, but Sylvia did. I know she's not your mum, and everyone gets that wrong all the time. But I believe she watched it.
She was a consultant on it.
Was she?
Yeah. She was brought in, which I think was another great source of anguish for Dad, that he wasn't involved at all, and she was brought in.
Oh, right. Well, she turned up at the premiere, and I remember having a photograph taken with her, and I was really nervous about meeting her, but she kind of, was kind and kind of said, well done, you kind of carried the baton with style. But I think the other thing that a lot of people don't know is that the dialogue between myself and Parker was written by Richard Curtis, because originally it was by the same guy. I can't remember his name. Oh well, doesn't matter. But it just wasn't. It wasn't on point, and it wasn't. It was supposed to be funny, and it just wasn't. So they brought Richard in to write all of our stuff. So that really helped kind of lift everything.
Yeah.
Having heard from Lady Penelope, it feels only right we hear from Parker himself, actor David Graham. For Pod 22, we spent a very special few hours with him at the King's Arms in Cookham, where Gerry was famously inspired by a particular wine waiter.
Well, we're here today to celebrate the birth of a famous, I think, voice, which happened when Gerry Anderson took me to lunch here, and there was a waiter, I forget his name now, and Arthur, and he came over and he said, "Would you like to see the wine list, sir?" So, and Gerry brought me here specifically to hear this bloke.
Yes.
And that day Parker was born. And he's been a nice little earner ever since.
Because you weren't filming.
I don't pay him commission.
No, I should think not. You weren't filming so very far away from here, were you?
No, in Slough, of course.
Lovely Slough.
Yeah, Slough.
And would you have had any thought 50 odd years ago that you'd be sitting here today?
No, but I mean, I'd done 4 series before Thunderbirds, and I never thought I'd be here again today. So it's a wonderful feeling to come here to this pub, which I remember. I don't know. I may have sat in that corner with Gerry at the time.
Wow! Right.
Over there, by the window. So it's just an amazing feeling to be here.
And did you have any sense at the time that this was something of a lasting, legendary production that you were part of, and a legendary character as well, or did that come much later?
I think it came later, but there had been a slow build-up because the preceding series had been very, very popular, and the techniques of filming and the special effects had been growing and growing and growing, and the budget was, for today, ginormous.
Yeah.
And so, wasn't unsurprising.
Yeah.
But it took a while to take off.
Yeah.
But when it did take off, boy, did it take off.
Yes. Now, I asked you earlier before we started recording whether you've ever felt it's been something of a millstone around your neck.
No, it hasn't been a millstone.
Yeah.
Because I was able to join it up with my acting career, which, you know, I did a lot of stage work, and I was at the National Theatre with Laurence Olivier's company, and I'd done shows with the great Leonard Rossiter and Arturo Ui, that fantastic production.
David Graham there, giving a hint of other credits in his illustrious career. Another Gerry Anderson stalwart who had a thriving career in films, TV and the stage was Shane Rimmer, the distinctive voice of Scott Tracy. In Pod 15, Jamie was lucky enough to be invited round for afternoon tea with him and his wife Sheila, where Shane told us how a part on a series called Compact led him to piloting Thunderbird 1.
Compact was where Gerry Anderson, your father, heard my voice and thought it'd be a good voice for Scott Tracy. And so that was the deal. We had a meeting, for rehearsals and this and that in a. What was it? Oh, it was a big sort of supermarket.
You went to his house to have a...
I first of all went to his house. The one in... where was it? Up the M40.
Gerrard's Cross, would it have been? Yeah, was it?
Cross.
Yeah. Was that White Plains? Was that the house?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. Quite impressive.
It probably was, yeah. I never went, sadly.
Didn't you?
No, I was born too late, I think.
Oh. Yes, it was quite a swimming pool and a lot, you know.
Yeah.
Real Hollywood.
I've seen some nice photos.
Yeah, I'll bet.
So you went to the house and...
We went to the house and went down to the basement where he had a studio. Anyway, I read some stuff, I forget what it was. And 2 weeks later I got a call saying, "You're Scott Tracy." Now, I didn't know anything about space or anything about how it worked. I didn't know your father. I didn't know... I was sort of clueless.
Do you know any of the history of the shows beforehand? Any awareness that the people you were working with had made these kids shows?
No, I didn't.
Shame.
Terrible. I lived in
Amazing.
a vacuum, I tell you.
Well, you were very busy, weren't you? That's why you didn't have time to watch kids' TV.
But, there we were. There's David Graham and Ray Barrett. Yeah, and between them, those two had an incredible array of voices. Amazing. As a matter of fact, I was looking through the book on Thunderbirds this morning, and it was all. They never just did one part. They did 3 or 4 during the course of one episode.
Yeah, or more.
And I didn't do it. I wasn't very good at funny voices, other voices.
You were the main man, though.
Yeah, Gerry didn't want you to do other voices.
No, he didn't really. Anyway, there I was, and it was great.
From someone who was there almost at the beginning to an actor who worked on Gerry's last series. In a very noisy pub, it's new Captain Scarlet himself from Pod 9, Wayne Forrester.
I actually went in to see I went and knocked on your dad's door in Pinewood because I heard this was being cast, and of course I'd been overlooked as usual. The stuff literally overlooked.
It was that short to us.
But I knocked on your dad's door in Pinewood and thinking I could maybe get a job as a motion capture artist on it, because I did the motion capture for the pilot series. For the pilot for
the one that had Ed Bishop and
with Ed Bishop,
yeah. Well, they were probably not up for doing motion capture.
Yeah, quite right. Well, I think I was Blue. I think I was Captain Blue, the body of Captain Blue for that one.
Right.
Weirdly,
you got punched in that case.
You got punched. I can't remember such a long time ago. Maybe the punch knocked some sense out of me.
18 years ago. 17?
It was a long time ago.
Yeah.
And he said, "What are you doing at the moment?" And I said, "Well, I'm trying to do voiceovers. I'm doing a lot of radio plays." And he said, "Why don't you audition for the show, as a speaking part?" And he handed me the script, and it was Captain Scarlet. And I went, oh, well, surely you don't want me to read for this, you want me to, for the smaller... No, he said, no, come in on Thursday and read for Scarlet. So I did.
Oh. Was it just you? Was it you really with somebody, or...?
No, it was just me. It was in a huge... God. It was on a huge stage somewhere in Pinewood.
Yeah.
And I read some of the and I remember writing other bits as well, so that I could sort of show a little bit of range.
You elaborated on your role, on your lines,
and then he said, well done. He said, you sound a lot taller than you look. And then about a week later, I found out I got the part, which is I couldn't believe it.
Amazing.
It was amazing.
Having heard from the good captain, let's turn to an interview with the very epitome of evil. From Terrorhawks, it's Zelda herself. In Pod 45, Jamie asked voice actress Denise Breyer to look back on her career and life.
I've just shown you a short video showing, sort of summarising your career as part of our Beyond Anderson series. Was that strange, watching it back?
Well, it was, yes, it was really. I live for the moment and forget the past and look forward to the future, but really, I've always been living just for this moment. And I think that's why I enjoy life so much.
Yeah, and why you're such a force of nature even now.
No.
Denise, I think I said to you at lunch, but you're one of those people who makes me look forward to being older. Because a lot of people get worried about, getting into their later years, into their 70s, 80s, 90s, etc. But you're one of those people that makes you think, actually, it'll probably be quite fun.
Well, I'm enjoying it, but I think that's so nice of you to say that, because I sometimes think my 90th year is the happiest I've ever had, because I'm seeing grandchildren grown up, waiting for my great-grandchild, hoping I'll have one soon.
Amazing.
And I don't know, life gets better and better, because you become more tolerant, and you see people's point of view in a different way. You see them, and you understand why they are who they are, and you just love a lot more.
Oh, bless you. She's so lovely. And if you, especially having seen that video, looking back, have you got a career highlight or a particular voice you love doing, or was it just the fact that you got to do that as your career?
I love being different characters. I think the most fun I had was playing Zelda. But I love playing Noddy. I like playing all these different characters because I am a character actress. I like to get out of my shell and into other forms.
And you do it all the time, even when you're not working, don't you? I mean, doing character voices.
Oh, yes, I do, yes. I sometimes enjoy myself by doing this very ginny old lady. I don't know where I heard her. I think it was Irene Vanbrugh or one of those old actresses. But I just love being other people, I suppose. I now, at last, quite like being me, but it's taken a long time.
But what of those who worked behind the scenes? Puppeteer and designer and model maker Christine Glanville was beside Gerry for so many of his productions, and for so many years. It seemed right that we give over 5 podcasts to an extended series of interviews with her. Here she is in Pod 79, talking amongst other things about one of Gerry's most fondly remembered series, Stingray.
And I remember that it was the first series on British television to be made for the colour. And so there was no reference in this country. So we did a test bit of film, and Reg took it over to America because we've got nothing over here to even try it on to see whether we've got the colours right. He took this to America, and they showed it on their screens. He came back and they had to repaint all the sets because, of course, they'd used far too many colours. It looked sort of absolutely terrible. So, I mean, this is why, they did this test. We haven't got it right. And So, but it was still a preparation period, so it didn't matter. I think that's quite interesting, in fact, that it was the first series made for colour television in this country. I mean, Gerry did a lot of firsts, you know. He doesn't get any credit, really, for any of it.
No, because it's all gone off now to America and other things have come up.
But that's right. I mean, it's a typical British thing, isn't it? But I mean, he was the one that started using monitors attached to cameras and that sort of thing. Yes. They tell this to people now, and they are very surprised to hear it, you know.
With Stingray, one or two people who'd worked on it said that series had a lot of charm about it.
Yes, that was one of my favourites. And the swimming sequences were lovely, and the fish, and the underwater sequences were very good to do, and they looked good. I think it was perhaps because it was water as a natural element, and so it gave something to the models and the puppets.
Pod 69 saw an archive feature with someone who was responsible for one of the most memorable aspects of Gerry's series, the music. Composer Barry Gray. Here, he's asked whether the classic theme from Thunderbirds was his favourite of his themes. His answer might surprise you.
It's one of them, but of course, I've done 12 series with Gerry. My favourite, shall I say, opening title from all the series was a series that's very, very little known. It was a series that was only shown on, I think, Midlands TV. A series called, it followed Joe 90, a series called
Secret Service.
Secret Service. There was some political, shall we say, machinations went on about having it on network, so it never went on network. It was only shown on Midlands when ATV just got Midlands, I think it was.
I know this particular thing was completely different from everything else that Gerry had produced.
Well, it's got a rather interesting little story to it, because this was a series, semi-comedy, but also to do with spying. And it was the first time that Gerry had used a live actor with puppets. And they made a complete model of the actor and his car, which was a Model T Ford. And they had a real Model T Ford, and they also had a small model radio controlled. And as it was a play on the word service, the Secret Service, the main secret agent was a vicar. And this is how it came about. And it was Gerry's idea for me to write something in the style of Bach and get the Swingle Singers to do it. You know, the Swingle Singers were very big at that time. And cut a long story short, I went to France to see Ward Swindle and try and get it set up. But the cost of their fee was so exorbitant it just wasn't on. So I came back and we did it with the Mike Sam Singers. In fact, I wrote the idea for the 3-part fugue that I did on the plane coming back.
Sadly, due to the age of many of Gerry's shows, we occasionally lose people who were associated with them. In most cases, they've enjoyed long careers. Effects and creature creator Richard Gregory, however, who worked with Gerry throughout the 80s and 90s, was taken from us far too soon. We paid tribute in Pod 36, where Jamie shared a conversation he'd had with Richard concerning the many adverts that Gerry made, including an ad for Scotch Videotape, which featured a skeleton puppet called Archie.
The original Archie was between third and half scale, from what I remember.
But made by somebody else?
Yeah, I think it was made by Chris Lyons back in Bristol, because I think Aardman were sort of associated with the original ads.
Right.
I'm not sure on that, but I'm certainly pretty certain that's what it was. And when your dad started doing the ads, they inherited the Archie puppet. And being that size, there was a lot of inertia in the puppet, which meant when you moved it, there was a lot of weight for the joints to take, so there wasn't enough friction in the joints. And then one day they went to do another ad, and they opened the MDF box which Archie was in, which was an MDF coffin which Archie lived in. Yeah. And they opened the box and Archie had disappeared. So someone obviously at some point had thought, well, if I take it out of the box, no one's even going to notice. And
so somebody nicked Archie?
Yes, somebody stole Archie.
Okay.
And
you made the new one.
And your dad approached me and said, do you think you could make a new one that's the scale, obviously, as well, with being, that size, meant the sets were really big, so you had to get onto the sets, you had to put rigs in to fly him because he wouldn't support his own weight. And then your dad said, well, if we make it more like, more manageable size, and a good size to always work with set-wise and scale-wise is the supermarination size, because it's good all round as far as models and access to sets. And I thought on that scale we can definitely make him self-supporting, so you can literally get in there and not worry about rigs, just freely animate him, and so I did that, and everybody was very pleased with him.
Awesome.
Yeah, and it was a nicer puppet to work with.
Pod 43 featured effects supremo Derek Meddings, so identifiable as the man who put the oomph in Gerry's productions. He gave us huge set pieces where our heroes would often face incredible danger, but sometimes Derek would be the one in peril.
When we were doing the attack of the alligators, we had a selection. We had 4-foot crocodiles, we had a 5-foot one, we had 2 5-foot ones, but one was a caiman, and it came down from a place up in the Midlands, this man who ran a miniature zoo or whatever it was, and it came down in a big laundry basket, a wicker laundry basket. And I opened up the lid to have a look at this thing, and it opened up its mouth and it hissed at me, and I shut the lid and I said, we're not going to use that one, because the others were all quite docile. This one was really vicious. And so we left him in the wicker basket and had him shipped back. But we had one which was 5 foot and quite docile, and we had a shot where it had to be a point of view from whoever was in the boat. I can't remember. They were going down through the swamps, and all of a sudden they look out the back of the boat. They see this alligator coming towards them, and it's enormous because the potion has gone into the swamp, and all the alligators have grown to enormous proportions. And we had to do this point of view. So we had this big tank that we used to use for sea shots, had the camera very low, and I had the crocodile with a rope round its neck, around its front arm, paws, legs, whatever you call them, and I was pulling it, and I had the rope was under the water, coming towards the camera, going through a screw eye, and I was in the tank in the corner, pulling it at an angle. And I could actually get quite a bit of, purchase on it, and I had to keep the rope in the tank, so I had to be in the tank. And I was pulling this crocodile, and it would surface because I was pulling it so fast, and the rope also was at such an angle that it had to come up towards the surface. And the crocodile would come through the water, because it would never open its mouth, and that's what we wanted it to do, open its mouth. And it would come towards the camera, and I'd come right up to the camera, and I'd say, okay, cut. And I would try to think, how the hell can we make this thing open its mouth? It just doesn't look very frightening. Anyway, we were going for another take, and it still didn't do anything. I thought that when it got really close to the camera, it might get cross, but it didn't. And I think we'd done about 6 takes, and I was in these big thigh waders, and I was standing in the tank, and I said to the crew, I said, okay, come on, we'll have one more go. So I pulled the rope to sort of feel the tension on the rope, and I pulled the rope, and I pulled the rope, and I pulled the rope, and there's no tension. The crocodile had come off. He's now swimming around the tank, and it was so murky and green because we put all the dye and it had to look like a swamp. I couldn't see it. Well, as soon as I realised it was off the rope, I leapt out that tank, and everybody said that I did a vertical takeoff.
As we headed to our half-century, pods 46, 47 and 48 featured one of our most popular series of interviews. They featured Jamie's mum, Mary Anderson. As Mary shared some candid and intimate views on being beside Gerry through some difficult periods in his career, they even spawned a hashtag of their own. Thanks, Mummy A.
He'd been very fortunate to have Lou Grade as his sort of godfather for so long, and then suddenly your godfather's gone, and you're cut adrift, and you don't actually know how to raise money to finance.
I suppose he hadn't been part of that process.
Hadn't had to. Yes, because every time he made a series, he'd got to the end, gone to Lou. Lou would say, "Here's a wad of money, go and make something else." So he'd done that for 20 years, and suddenly he was out of it. And I guess he hadn't made the contacts, having been sheltered by Lou. He didn't really know where to go for finance, and so that was all. It was difficult. I remember him writing a script for something or other for Ericsson, the communications company, and he did a few bits and pieces. But, it was a struggle. I remember one morning answering the door very early, and there were 2 bailiffs at the door who'd come to seize a couple of oil paintings that Dad had.
Nice.
Yes. And that was a bit scary. But, I mean, they were quite nice for bailiffs.
I thought they were paintings. Okay.
So
because there's the famous description of Dad being sat in that flat. I assume that flat, not being able to afford the heating, wearing a big coat in winter, trying to write things. Is that accurate?
Yeah. Well, that's when he was doing the Ericsson script and things like that. I was out temping, and then I got a job working for a producer called Larry DeWay, who was out of the Norman Jewison stable. And I had a good job with Larry for 2 or 3 years until I had to chuck it in to go off to Israel with Dad on something called Operation Shockwave.
Of course, if you've produced so many amazing shows over so many decades, you're bound to pick up some fans. But I think both Jamie and I have been amazed by how many well-known TV faces, musicians and actors have come out of the closet as Gerry Anderson fans. Way back in Pod 6, Jamie spoke to the legendary Gary Newman about his love for all things Anderson.
I actually have a vague memory of the Supercar series.
Yeah.
I can't remember very much about it. I don't remember any specific episodes, but I remember there was Supercar.
Yeah.
And I was interested in that. I'd be too nervous to even sort of describe what I saw. I just remember it. I'm sure it was black and white.
Oh yeah, it definitely would have been black and white.
But I remember the first one I remember properly is Fireball XL5.
Yeah.
But for some reason I remember that in colour. I don't know if that was in colour. So I think I might have seen a comic version of it as well.
So Fireball was shot in black and white.
Right.
But there was TV21, the comic, where there was a lot of...
I used to get TV21. So that's where I would have seen it in colour?
Yeah, that's it, yeah.
Okay. Maybe it looked like a yellow flash and I'm struggling.
Yeah, you're remembering it.
Yeah.
So
and the front would come away.
That's it.
It was such a cool looking machine, wasn't it?
It was very cool.
Was it Steve Zodiac? Was he the captain of it all?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well remembered.
Fireball XL. What a great name.
Do you know that was derived from Castrol XL?
Was it?
Which Dad saw in a petrol station and thought, XL's quite cool, if I stick a number after it, XL5, that sounds great.
Do you know what? I got something from, they used to, I don't know if it might even be Castrol XL. They used to do an advert and it showed oil slowly coming out of a can and it would say liquid, I think it said Castrol Liquid Engineering.
Yeah.
I nicked that for a song. One of my best known songs has got Liquid Engineering in it.
After spotting him wearing various Anderson-related T-shirts on BBC's Springwatch, we learned that even naturalist and broadcaster Chris Packham is a fan. Over pods 11 and 12, he told us why Gerry Anderson Productions held such a fascination for him.
And the T-shirts, which are the reason we're chatting, has that been something recent?
No, I've got loads of them. I've got Thunderbirds, and I get them off of Amazon and eBay and things like that, But I've got they've gone back years and years. I've got one or two with Daleks on because I was quite into Daleks, but I soon got out of Doctor Who. I was quite big into Star Trek as well. I was never a Doctor Who fan. Production values were never as good as Star Trek. So the first series of Star Trek, when they were shown in the UK, I was massively into that. And but I'm not a Trekkie as much as I'm an Anderson-y.
I'm glad to hear it.
No, it was American. It was just, it didn't have that done in a garage, simple brilliance to it. It was predictably brilliant, and that wasn't as clever. It didn't do all the things that we've discussed to actually punch way, way above its weight. And I love the sort of underdog success. I like that whole British mentality of, we need a bomb that bounces. I know, let's make one, So and let's do it in a shed, So I love all of that, and I love celebrating all of that. So that's what draws me more to Anderson than Star Trek, But no, I've got the ragged Thunderbirds t-shirts going back a long time. I've got some pictures of me blonde spiky hair with a Thunderbirds t-shirt on.
Oh, amazing!
In Pod 52, comedian and impressionist John Coleshaw told us of his love for Space 1999 and accidentally took part in a podcast crossover with Nicholas Briggs.
And in Space 1999, you had all elements were in there with that. And when that came along, I was absolutely ready for it. And I just drank it all up. It appealed to those elements of your childhood that were still there, but it also appealed to that part of your psyche that was looking to a time when you were going to be older. It had that it led you forward. It got you thinking about, what am I going to do when I'm in my 20s? Will I be working as a scientist? Will we be able to visit the moon then? Could this end up being my job? Could I be like Barry Morse's character? There was something. It appealed to every part of your psyche. It really did. But always with that Anderson sense of magic. And as I watched that back now, tremendous.
A lovely little summary there, John. Really nice. So does that mean... Actually, you'll never guess who's trying to FaceTime me right now, John. It's bloody Nick Briggs.
Is it Nick Briggs?
Yeah. Hang on, I'm just going to tell him to go away, John. Nick Briggs, this is a bit awkward. Yeah. You're FaceTiming. Are you doing a podcast?
Yeah.
Because I'm doing a podcast interview with John Coleshaw currently.
Oh,
hello, Nick.
He can. He says, hello, Nick. Hello, Nick.
Oh, bless you. Well, we've had an accidental celebrity guest.
Yes. I'm sure I can snip this bit out and forward it to you so that you can actually have all four of us on your podcast, possibly with John's permission.
Wow, amazing.
Yes, that will be.
Well, John,
that will be absolutely marvelous. Oh, so sorry, I keep talking to everybody. Yes, see you soon, Nick. See you soon. Bye for now.
See you soon, Nick. See you soon. Bye. Thank you, and you. Goodbye.
Bye.
Sorry about that, John. We've had an accidental podcast crossover.
Ray Earl is an English writer and broadcaster, best known as the author of the 2007 book My Fat, Mad Teenage Diary, which was later adapted into an E4 comedy drama series. She's less well known as a Gerry Anderson and Captain Scarlet aficionado, but in Pod 71, Ray Earl waxed lyrical on her fondness for 1980s Terrorhawks.
It just had the feeling of a Gerry Anderson show. Now, don't ask me what that feeling necessarily was, because I will go into esoteric nonsense, but it had the feeling. My memory of Terrorhawks is lovely because I remember it being on a Saturday, and towards the end of her life, my nan, who wasn't my nan, she was just the lady next door, but of course had this amazing aerial that could get all the stations. She moved to an old people's complex and she went blind, and I used to take her fish and chips on a Saturday, and Terrorhawks was on then. And she used to let me watch, what I like and just listen in the background. And the thing that stays with me about Terrorhawks was the soundtrack. Really? I remember it having a real poppy soundtrack.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, well,
because we've gone. Yeah.
It was Richard Harvey, the composer, who used a lot of electronic stuff, and even the sound effects were created musically, like the Zeroids bouncing and their shutters opening and that kind of thing was all musically created with synths. And then Christopher Burr, Dad's business partner and the co-creator of the show, insisted on having Kate Kestrel as the pop songstress, who is also...
That's it!
So they'd be rumbling along with the plot, and Zelda's going to attack again, and we think this is going to happen. And then she'd stop and sing. Yeah, amazing.
I loved that because, may I say, there was a slight camp quality about that I really loved, because it was almost like a bit of variety that was coming into it.
Yeah.
And I was not against that in any way, shape or form. I'd forgotten all about that. But the thing that stays in my head is the poppy nature of it. It felt a lot poppier. Yeah. And obviously a lot more, I felt it was for a younger audience, not in a bad way, but I felt it had a lot of very enjoyable froth, where you can't call Captain Scarlet frothy.
Oh, no.
It has no froth at all, really.
Yeah. And any darkness in Terrorhawks was countered with humour, certainly later in the show.
Absolutely. Though, is that Zelda?
Well remembered, yes.
Yes, Zelda always reminded me, and she married up in my mind, I always thought she was the right side of cartoony villain, very much so. So though the Terrorhawks were quite frightening in themselves, I thought she was quite... easy on the young brain, if that makes sense. Whereas
really?
Captain Black wasn't. Yes. Captain Black wasn't.
There are thousands of adults who had a history of childhood bedwetting who would disagree with you because Zelda frightened them so much.
I can understand that. It's where a show hits you in your life and the parallels you make with what's going on that I think give it extra substance. I'm not for 1 minute going to mock anybody that was terrified of Zelda.
And finally, a double whammy from Pod 67. Broadcaster and journalist Samira Ahmed famously chose Space 1999 as her specialist subject on Celebrity Mastermind, and even wore a Moonbase Alpha uniform for the recording of the show. Here, she joins Doctor and broadcaster Kevin Fong to talk at Jamie about their love for the series.
I felt it at the time, I feel it today, that it's a big, it's a big thing to assume that 20 years into the future from the point at which it was made, that actually you're going to have a society developed well enough that the equality of opportunity across the board is going to be such that this is going to be broadly crewed by a representative culture of people. Because, let's face it, at the time, that's not what was happening.
Although not that many, although we're very fond of characters like Sandra Benesch, wasn't that often she got a chance to really show what she could do. And I think she was the first, so she did a lot of first to faint, last to get up.
Screaming and fainting, yeah.
Screaming and fainting. Although I did love the one, I know she had to wear a sort of leopard skin, sort of Drakkar Welsh style bikini. But you know that one where they've all been turned back into Neanderthals? They go into that planet, they go into that cloud. And she's sort of captured by one of them. I thought at least she was sort of centre stage and having a good time. But
it's actually... You don't know, or at least I don't think I noticed that so much that, okay, in truth, the hierarchy in terms of the
Full Circle, that's the episode. Just remembered, sorry.
I really thought that was a slightly dodgy episode, Full Circle. But anyway, but I'm not sure that I noticed that so much. Because the truth is that the hierarchy in terms of performance, and this is sort of acting hiring, was still that thing of basically the diverse cast generally got less big roles. But even the idea conceptually that actually these senior positions would be occupied by these people, to me, was really important. And to me, they were interchangeable. And so, so I thought, I could be a Sandra, but I could be a Helena Russell, but I could be an Alan Carter. And it seems to be, whether you're a man or a woman, or wherever you've hailed from in the world, you can occupy a place there. And I probably could be a Commander Koenig as well. And that's the important messaging to a child, independently of whether or not, of course, you're going to represent the biases that are intrinsic to that workforce at that time in the acting credentials. But the representation of the story to me was very important, And you know what? I reckon unconsciously or consciously, it is probably why I ended up being driven towards science, because I thought, oh, well, there's the equality of opportunity.
Just some highlights from the many, many interviews and guests that we've had here on the Gerry Anderson Podcast. A quick thanks from Jamie and me to all our wonderful guests for coming along to join us, and who knows who'll turn up for the next 100.
Well, that was lovely.
Isn't it just? Isn't it nice
Richard
to look
James,
back? Yeah.
Thank you so much for doing that. And I said to you as we were listening that hearing both Shane and Richard Gregory,
yes,
people who are no longer with us, was really, really touching. So, Podsterons, I hope you enjoyed that. Whether that's the first time you've heard bits of those interviews or you're revisiting them, I really enjoyed revisiting them and hearing them in that way. And it just made me think, what an amazing collection of interviews that we've had over the past 99 podcasts. Incredible, really.
Absolutely incredible. I must say, when we first started doing this and you came up with the idea of doing the podcast and the various features, and you said, and we'll have an interview every week. And I thought, okay, let's see how long that lasts then.
Good luck with that.
Yeah. But haven't we done well?
Yeah, and you know that we've got the next 5 podcasts after this already recorded.
Correct.
So it's amazing, really. And hopefully many more to come beyond.
Yes, exactly.
If you've got suggestions of people you'd like to hear from, please do email us, podcast@gerryanderson.co.uk. Do tweet us, him, Richard N. James, or me. I'm Jamie Anderson.
Good, well done.
And use the hashtag Gerry Anderson Podcast.
Wow, it's all topsy-turvy
in fact, if you're enjoying this particular podcast, then do use the hashtag Pod100, POD100, and let us know what your favourite bit was, and maybe a link to the podcast. That would be lovely.
Now, Jamie, it's time to hear from our very own Facebook group and the Saturday night Podsteron quizzes.
Hi, this is Willow with the Podsteron quiz crew, and we all wanted to introduce ourselves and tell you a little bit about why we love Anderson.
Hi, this is Jenny, and I love the Gerry Anderson world because it's fun, exciting, and adventurous. And my favourite series is Thunderbirds.
Hi, this is Rob Cassidy, and I love all things Anderson because it's good, clean, old-fashioned family entertainment at its best.
Hello all, Simpsons Clips 24 here, writer, independent filmmaker and nutter, and I like Gerry Anderson because he doesn't talk down to people and in his shows, he treats them with the most respect whilst maintaining that fine line between seriousness and tomfoolery. And it's his work that's helped me to become a writer. And my favourite show is Lavender Castle. I suggest you give it a go.
Hi, it's Steve. I love the Gerry Anderson shows because they are innovative and classic family entertainment.
Hi, it's Mark here. I'm a long-time Gerry Anderson fan from the very early 60s when I first started watching it. And for me, the best thing about Gerry Anderson shows is that they have the best explosions on any TV show.
Hi, it's Doug here. I'm old enough to remember most of the Gerry Anderson series when they first premiered on television. My favourite show is UFO Interceptors Immediate Launch.
Hi, I'm Andrea. I like Gerry Anderson shows because of all the good memories I have of watching them with my dad.
Hi, Mark Wilson here. I love Anderson because my dad introduced me to Thunderbirds from a very young age, and Anderson's just something that's stuck with me right through life. Now I can pass it on to my children as well. It's a fantastic feeling. Anderson's always been there in my life, so it's just fantastic shows. Absolutely love them.
Hello everyone, Alex here. I love Gerry Anderson shows because his shows are always exciting to watch, and like Robert J. Sawyer said, he has a very optimistic view of the future, and every time I watch one of his shows, it's he knows how to make it exciting. My favorites would be Thunderbirds, Stingray, and Joe 90. Okay, Captain Scarlet's on there too.
Hi, Mark Gordon here. I love Anderson shows because they're exciting, the effects are brilliant, the puppets are brilliant. It's just good all-round family entertainment.
Hello, this is Simon Allen, Podsteron and Podsteron. I like it on the podcast when Jamie makes a noise when one of my jokes is told. My claim to fame is I used to be the late, great Shane Rimmer's neighbour. Thank you.
Hi, this is Kath. My favourite thing about the Gerry Anderson shows is their views of the future and how well the characters are built and developed. And I do also like very big explosions. My favourite series is Original Captain Scarlet.
Hi, I'm Robin. There's just something about seeing all the different characters heroically throwing themselves into danger. They're just living the best life.
Hello there, Mr. Henderson. I would just like to say thank you for my childhood.
It was rather bloody good.
Hi, it's Rebecca here. I love the mini worlds of Anderson because they are rich and diverse, and they continue to inspire each new generation. So thank you, FAB SIGPWOR.
Hello, it's Abby Spencer rounding this off. My favourite series are probably original Thunderbirds, Captain Scarlet and Stingray, although you can't see right now, I'm dressed up for the quiz as Torchy the Battery Boy. I'm actually starting to become a bit of a fan of his. And everyone here is awesome. So FAB SIG, and I believe that was the quiz. That was the quiz.
That was the quiz.
That was the quiz.
How lovely to hear from our Podsterons.
Wow.
Yes.
What a glorious gaggle.
Yes, aren't they? Exactly. And if you want to join the glorious gaggle, head on over to facebook.com/groups/Podsterons and you can join in the fun there. I know lots of people are still joining every week, joining in with the cosplay pictures and the gift games and, of course, watching streamed stuff in the evenings and doing the quizzes on Saturday night. Marvellous.
Sorry, that was my little dog leaving.
Oh, bye then.
He's already had enough.
Yeah, everyone's a critic.
But I haven't. Now, I'd just like to take a moment in the middle of the podcast to thank you, Richard James, for not only for editing together our very special interviewees feature, but for being a part of this nonsense for 2 years, doing it every week on Rain or Shine or Theatre Tour.
Yes, that's right.
You've recorded in some bizarre places under some strange circumstances. Sometimes, occasionally, we've recorded in the same place, but you've been absolutely marvellous, and it wouldn't be the Gerry Anderson Podcast without you. So please never leave and don't change anything.
Oh, Jamie, thank you very much. Right back at you. It's an absolute pleasure. And it certainly wouldn't be the Gerry Anderson Podcast without you.
Possibly. Fair enough. We can agree on that.
Yeah.
Cheers. Now, we've got a ton more listener clips to get through. I mean, do you want to squeeze a couple more in now?
Come on, then. Let's hear from Gary Hodgkinson, Robert Monk, and Heather Ballard.
So, hello, Richard and Jamie, or Jamie and Richard, or sorry, add Chris Dale into the mix. Fab trio. Well, 100 pods. Congratulations, guys. Absolutely brilliant. Fantastic interviews, especially the older ones and archive ones, particularly like them, especially Mummy A. Was fantastic. And Chris Dale, of course, with the randomiser. 100 pods. Oh, you're getting old. But well done. And, well, I have to record another one of these in another 100 pods time. Okay, keep up the good work. Cheers, guys.
Hello, Robert Monk here. For me, Captain Scarlet was my favourite till Space Precinct came along. The SP Police Cruiser is my favourite vehicle, closely followed by the SPV. For me, the best thing about the podcast, apart from Jamie, Richard and Chris, has been all the friends I have made and the stories we have all shared. So a massive thank you to everyone who is involved in the FAB productions of Anderson's, and here's to the next 100 pods, FAB.
Hey, this is Heather Ballard from Georgia in the United States. I just wanted to say thank you for the podcast. It's helped me rediscover something from my youth, as well as plenty of other people's youths, and helped me find all those people so we could celebrate it together. Thank you.
There's another top trio.
Oh, yes, very good. A glorious gaggle.
Right. Yeah, I forgot to say how patronising you can be occasionally when you're not being lovely.
Who, me? Jamie, do you know what patronising means?
Do you even know what that means? Yeah, all right, okay, yeah, thanks for that. Goodness me. Now, we should also thank Chris Dale, without whom...
big time.
There will be very little Gerry Anderson content in the Gerry Anderson podcast. Because Chris comes along and does the randomiser every week. Yeah. He puts up with Torchy, he puts up with, it could be practically anywhere on the island from the Protectors. I mean, goodness me, that was a stretch for him. Gosh. So, Chris, thank you. You are much loved by the whole Gerry Anderson podcast community. Keep doing what you're doing. And this week, not only has Chris done his usual randomiser, but he's gone above and beyond to create something rather special.
Oh.
Now, I was having a clear out in my office recently. Now, Richard, you can see the background. So
what, you cleared that? That's your office cleared out, is it?
It is, yes.
Right.
Anyway, look, I found a couple of tapes, which I then transferred. One of them was some old BBC reporting of the Lenged mine disaster, which was the disaster that inspired Thunderbirds. And that got me thinking, we've got some old Gerry Anderson archive footage that we've not played out before that nobody's ever heard. Wouldn't it be nice to have something about the genesis of... probably, arguably, the most important Anderson production in terms of bringing new audiences in.
Yeah.
That's had repeat showings across the decades and still brings in new fans now.
Yeah.
Thunderbirds. So I tasked the lovely Chris Dale with the job of producing something which tied all of this together. I think he's done a fantastic job, and what better time to hear from Dad than on the 100th edition of the Gerry Anderson podcast. So here is Chris's piece on the genesis of Thunderbirds, featuring archive audio, which isn't great quality, but it is perfectly serviceable, of Gerry Anderson and some BBC footage of the Lunghead mine disaster. It's really lovely. You're bound to learn something new, I think. And so where better to hear it from the horse's mouth? Here we go.
At 7 p.m. on September 30th, 1965, viewers of ATV Midlands were the very first to see the latest Supermarionation production from AP Films, the television studio based in Slough that had already enjoyed huge success with Supercar, Fireball XL5 and Stingray. This new series was to be the biggest and most expensive production the company had mounted so far. Yet the idea for the series itself was born out of tragedy, following a mine disaster that had caught the attention of the world almost 2 years earlier.
First of all, the idea of Thunderbirds was triggered by the German mine disaster. A lot of miners were trapped underground. I remember listening on my car radio and hearing that their oxygen was running out and a big drill was being brought in by train, and there were news flashes.
In this last rescue operation, the most crucial moment came a few minutes after 5 a.m., long before anybody expected.
On October 24th, 1963, a lake directly over an iron mine in Germany collapsed, and at least 40 men lost their lives as water flooded into the galleries. Miraculously, more than twice that number were able to escape to the surface within just a few hours. A small pocket of 20 survivors, however, had fled to a disused section of the mine. With no way in or out, and their numbers now reduced to 11, teams on the surface hatched a desperate rescue plan.
Because of the danger of burying the men alive, it had been planned to sink the shaft outside the chamber and dig a way through to the men. As it was, the escape shaft emerged in the northeast corner of the men's cabin, and the much-feared fall of rock and earth did not take place. Waiting in their cabin, listening to the drill, the miners suddenly warned the rescuers that the sound of the drill was getting heavy, and now they reported a slight fall of stones. This was the first indication the rescuers had that their shaft might penetrate the chamber itself. The operations van called down to the miners, "Are the stones falling from the point at which the noise of the drill is loudest?" The reply, "Yes." "Excellent, stay well clear and keep reporting." Seconds later, a bellow from below stopped drilling, and then a deafening rush of compressed air lasting several seconds. Quietly but tensely and repeatedly, as the sound died away, they called, "Hello below, report please, report please." A pause, then coughing and spluttering. "We're all right, the place is full of dust." "Are your men all calm?" came the question. "Yes, quite calm. The dust is clearing now. The whole place wobbled, but it seems to be holding up." Very slowly, drilling then started again. The tip of the drill was still several feet from the men's ceiling. It was the compressed air used to blow the loose earth to the surface that had broken through to the men. A second moment of danger was still ahead. This one came just before 9 o'clock. Working now with the care of archaeologists, the drillers inched their way downwards, and again, all went well. "We can see the tip of the drill," came the call from below, "and it's a clean round hole. Fall of earth negligible." Withdrawing the drill, the third dangerous moment went equally well, and all was now set for lining the rest of the shaft with steel tubes. This operation went like clockwork, and so did the final rescue itself. The final stage was accomplished with a barely credible smoothness. It took 2.5 hours from the moment the escape cylinder, empty, was lowered on a test run through the shaft to the shout we heard from the inside of the chamber when the last man was safely above ground. 2.5 hours of tension that left one weak at the knees. The entire operation took place out of sight, down in the gallery, inside the escape shaft, and in the pressure chamber at the top. The escape cylinder was lowered at 10:15 GMT, a test run that gave the miners their first glimpse of the capsule that was to rescue them. They greeted it as they've greeted every milestone in their 8 days underground, cheerfully and calmly, and promptly sent it up again as they'd been told to. The next milestone, 45 long minutes later, was the arrival in the capsule of the foreman who'd volunteered to see them to the top. And now, the first of the 3 trapped men, Polai, the youngest, was to ascend. As they strapped him in, their leader, Hanush, grunted into the microphone, "He's a tight fit. He's been eating too much, but we'll get him in." They did, and at 12 minutes past 11, he reached the top. And now the operation gathered speed. Less than 5 minutes later, Hanush and the foreman were strapping in the miner Leda. "He's the biggest. Can you get him in?" called a voice from the operations van. "He must be got in." 2 minutes after past, Hanush himself was on the surface. A great moment this. He has a lot of admirers, this middle-aged miner. And then finally, the tricky business of bringing up the foreman, Siska, who'd volunteered to go below to send the others up. Siska's ascent had been carefully planned. He had to travel without a safety belt, for there was no one there to strap him in. And because no one was left to guide the capsule through the hole in the ceiling, he did it himself and mounted the capsule from a bench. He was to give his own order for the ascent, and in case the mic was out of reach, they made one test call up the shaft 260 feet to the men manning the winch above. This was perhaps the most dramatic sound of all. It echoed up the pipe, langsam auf, slowly up, and then we heard the clanking of the cylinder against the walls of the shaft for the last time. 3 minutes later, a burst of cheerful sound from the pressure chamber, crowded now, and we knew that the rescue was over. 11:39. Dead silence from everyone listening, and then people turned away from each other and walked off in different directions, getting a grip on themselves.
I think this is what really inspired me, that, if you have a disaster of this size and you really need to bring in all the heavy gear, it is a massive rescue operation, and it's international, because if somebody's got the right kind of crane, they're going to send it, aren't they?
The disaster had occurred while Stingray was still in production, and shortly before Gerry Anderson was due to meet with Lou Grade to discuss ideas for the next AP film series. But as Gerry later recalled, the process of transition from one show to another was not always as smooth as it might have seemed.
We would be shooting Stingray, and towards the end I would go to Lou with a new idea. And clearly he had to put the idea to the Americans, he had to sow a few seeds, he had to make sure that he could sell it. He probably had to ensure the company had the cash flow, not just for my shows, but there are many other things going on. So, he was never able to give a go-ahead. On the very first day I said, we must talk about a new series. In principle, I used to put the ideas to him early enough in order to get the go to start spending money kind of the day after we finished shooting the previous series. But there were times when we would be held up for perhaps 3 or 4 weeks whilst Lou was checking this out and that out. And in that time, we would lay some staff off. We would overhaul equipment. We would perhaps be designing for the new show. It was always very difficult to do anything until we were told to go ahead. But in principle, we really never stopped. I mean, to have a break of 3 weeks between major productions is something that's almost unheard of today. At that time, Lou was saying, "What's the new show?" And I came up with this idea for International Rescue, which I then called Thunderbirds, because my brother, who was killed in the war, trained in Misa, and Thunderbird Field was close to him. The series was commissioned by Lou. He was very supportive. I was the one who wanted to go bigger and better all the time, but he was right there supporting me. I didn't have to talk him into it. I mean, it was two like minds.
With the idea for the new series now agreed with Lou Grade, Gerry and his wife Sylvia set off to their holiday home in Portugal to write the first episode, Trapped in the Sky.
The only way I could write was really to dictate. I dictated the show, and I had to go fast because, you're inventing it as you're going along, and try to remember where all the characters were, and this, that and the other is really quite difficult. Now obviously I had devoted a lot of time myself to thinking about the plot and the basic structure. It was never discussed with the crew until the first script was finished, revised, printed, and then circulated.
With the script for the first episode now completed, it was time for production to get started back in Slough. One of the first and most important tasks was the design of the 5 Thunderbirds craft, the job of which fell to Derek Meddings.
I was very specific in my brief, and I can tell you what my brief was, and I can tell you what he did.
5.
My brief was a space station which had panoramic windows and Thunderbird 5, cut out on the windows. That it had to be large enough to have this great big bank of tape recorders all listening to the various frequencies, and that it was in permanent orbit. End of brief. Everything else was Derek Meddings.
4.
Thunderbird 4 I had described as a one-man underwater craft and given no indication whatsoever about the design, so that was totally Derek.
3.
Well, 3 was a space rocket. The design of it didn't excite me too much then, and looking back, I think it was just a rocket.
2.
Thunderbird 2 was described as a big, lumbering cargo ship capable of carrying huge weights at high speed for that kind of aircraft. All the rest was Derek Meddings, including the idea of the interchangeable pods, which of course was an absolutely wonderful idea.
1.
That was based on logical thought. A small one-man craft today can go, Mach 4, and equally today Galaxy C5A, the American gigantic cargo aircraft, I don't know what it does, probably 550 miles an hour, so it's fast, but it's a hell of a lot slower than a single-seater. I had thought of this as being sort of almost suborbital in terms of flight, and therefore rocket-shaped. It had to take off vertically because of going through the pool, and if it took off vertically, it's not going to get anywhere on Earth. It's going to go up vertically. Sooner or later, it's got to curve and change into horizontal flight. And the moment it changed into horizontal flight, it had to vary its geometry in order to stay up in the air. That meant it had to have wings that extended. The pilot would be facing, having to sit up like I'm sitting up, and therefore when they went into a vertical flight, the chair I asked, to be put on a swivel so that he would always be sitting in the correct gravitational position. And that one was designed by Derek Meddings, but that was pretty much as I described it.
Of equal importance was the creation of the characters, starting with those of the Tracy family. With the space race still very much at the forefront of popular culture, the 5 brothers who manned the Thunderbirds craft would each be named after a real-life astronaut.
It starts off with an ex-astronaut and his 4 sons. That's how the characters begin. I think it was the Mercury program at that time. They were given the names of the astronauts because it was a space show and it just seemed a hell of a good idea at the time.
Despite Thunderbirds being filmed in Britain, a central cast of largely American characters was of vital importance if the show was going to be an international success.
We were spending a huge amount of money on this show. In today's terms, we were spending $500,000 plus on each episode. So we're talking about £16 million. 16 million, £20 million for a television series is big bucks, and for children, it's just huge. And I knew that it had to sell well in the States. There was a great resistance in the States at that time to British product. One option was to make a story about British people and bring an American character into it. And unless the American character was going to be the lead, it was of no value. So, you either made a film about New Scotland Yard and somehow engineered it that an American detective took the lead, which I always felt was pretty offensive to people here and pretty unbelievable to people in the States. Or the other route, which I much preferred, was to make it an American picture, which happened to be made on location in England. Thunderbirds was made in Slough, but it was an American picture. That was the thinking behind it. And we went to great lengths to make it American. We used to print the scripts on American Quarto, not A4, so that when the Americans picked the scripts up, they didn't feel alien. We used to use American spelling in the scripts. We were very, very careful on accents. I mean, the Canadians, for instance, would say oot instead of out. And these are the little points we used to watch so as not to give the game away.
However, Thunderbirds was still a British show, and Gerry was very aware of the importance of keeping the British end up.
It made sense for it to be an American picture and have American characters. We had to represent the British somehow, and how do we represent the British without lousing up the show? I thought that what do Americans laugh at? They laugh at British aristocracy. So therefore we have lady. Well, we don't want a lady thingy-bob who's 65 years old. We want a good-looking dish, so we have Lady Penelope Crichton Ward. We have her mansion, which is very attractive. And where do all American tourists go when they come over here? They go to the stately homes, don't they? What else do they understand? They understand Cockney. I mean, everybody in London at the time was a Cockney. How many people in America at that time had been outside America? Very few. And so all they knew about England was aristocracy and Cockneys. So this gave us Penelope and Parker. Once you start thinking about these things and reasoning it, it begins to work itself out. Lady Penelope, she would have a Rolls Royce. She would have a Rolls Royce, she'd have a driver. Okay, so the driver is a Cockney. And because she was a member of International Rescue, then she did all these things and she had all these gadgets.
Of course, every great British secret agent has to have an equally great British car when they're out on missions. James Bond had his Aston Martin, and Lady Penelope would have Fab 1.
We have a Lady Penelope to represent or to interest the English audience and to amuse the American audience. It follows, therefore, that she has the best car in the world, which has to be a Rolls Royce. The dateline was in the future, so it has to be a new design. She's leading a very dangerous life, and therefore it follows that, if you take a simple example, she would have a bodyguard carrying a revolver. If you take it a step further, on the back floor you would have a submachine gun. You take it a step further and you start developing all these devices. As I say, it comes from logically thinking it through and these things gradually materialize in one's mind. Having said all of that, I did not design Fab 1. I didn't build it. I say over and over again, there was a very clever team. And although I was in the luxury position of looking at sketches and saying yes, no, like that, and a bit of that and a bit of that, the fact is that a lot of the stuff was great that came into me. And although the ideas were based upon stuff I had written, much of it was different to the way I had envisioned it. So I never want to come over as Mr. Big who takes credit for everything. But yes, I did trigger these things.
The voices for the Thunderbirds characters would be supplied by several actors who had worked for the Andersons before, plus quite a few new names, many of whom would return in later productions. As happy as they were to bring in new talent, the Andersons were also keen to engender a sense of loyalty among the regulars.
When it came to the voices, I think we were always pretty loyal to all the people. If people are working well with you, and if you're happy working with them, and if they give you no trouble, and if they help you make a great success, if you have any decency in you at all, I think you obviously want to help them, provided it's not to the detriment of the picture. So there would be the pool of people that we had used in the past that we would clearly consider. Then there would be people that they themselves would recommend to us. I've got a friend, or I was working the other day in a studio and there was a brilliant guy, his name is. And like everybody else, we would watch television and listen to radio, and if you're in production and you hear an interesting voice, you make an inquiry, who is that? And so you now interview all these various people, audition them, they would be given a rundown on the characters, and then they would read for the part.
In the early days of Supercar and Fireball XL5, the puppets had maintained the same cheerful expressions on their faces no matter how dangerous the situation was or how dramatic their voice sounded. On Stingray, a way had been found for the puppets to better reflect the performances of the voice artists by sculpting heads featuring different expressions for the regular characters, and this method remained in use throughout Thunderbirds and into later productions.
The problem was that I used to direct the dialogue recording, and there was a very good reason for this, because we had a number of directors and we would be recording the dialogue for a film that was to be shot maybe 6 weeks hence. Say we shot 2 pictures in one day. Well, those 2 directors weren't necessarily available. So I used to direct the dialogue, because apart from directing performance, I was that close to the scripts that I was able to instantly say, when you're calling base, the aircraft is spinning out of control. So, you've got to put the stress and strain in your voice, and you've got to be shouting above the engine noise. And here you're whispering, because round the other side of the wall is Lady Penelope talking to, and you don't want her to overhear you. So it was only not only a question of directing performances, it was also a question of steering the artists, who were totally blind. They didn't know what the hell they were reading, and telling them where they were, what kind of frame of mind they were in, whether they were projecting, whether it was conversation, whether it was radio. If it was radio, it was always spoken, much more slowly and with great clarity, because at that time, radio was difficult to understand. You start off at a recording session, and I'd find myself saying to an artist, look, you're really mad, okay? So you're screaming at this guy. And that would be fine at the recording session. Now I'd go to rushes and see this the same face, shouting one minute and near to tears the next moment and laughing the next moment, always the same face. Now, the puppeteers used to put a curl on the mouth and shape the eyebrows, and they used to do a certain amount to alter the expression, but there was a limit to what they could do. We had the standard head, which was as far as possible an all-purpose expression, kind of I'm content, and it would not do for any kind of extreme. Then we would have the smiling face. We would have a head where the eyes could blink. This was usually if a character had to fall unconscious or go to sleep. And on certain characters we had the very unhappy, frowning face. And these heads we used to literally interchange for various sequences.
Continuing another trend that had its origins in previous productions, Thunderbirds would also see many guest character puppets turning up again in later episodes, although Gerry wasn't their biggest fan.
We had all the permanent characters made and duplicated. It took a long time to create a character and make the head from fiberglass and therefore make it permanent. And we had a whole series of so-called revamps. Now, the revamps were full puppet bodies, and they had heads with eyes, which had, all the eye movement, and they had mouths, or a mouth opening, with an electronic mouth movement, but they were faceless. The face was rather like a half an egg, and for characters that were only going to make one appearance, they used to sculpt the face by pushing the plasticine onto this egg former, and then sculpt the face until it was approved, paint it up, And when we shot the picture, we would just tear the face off, and the revamp was hung up, ready for the next episode. I was very, very unhappy with the revamp characters. I did not have a lot of time for them. I mean, even going back to the Thunderbird pilot.
I've been dreading this moment. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the captain speaking.
The pilots of the Fireflash, I mean, I thought were awful.
Yeah, I know.
But we had simply run out of time, and that's the best we could get by the time we were due to start shooting. But I was generally unhappy with revamp characters. But when we had a character that came off well, you know, we found a voice that suited the character, characterization all meshed, we then would keep that character, albeit with a plasticine face, but it would be stored very carefully. And we ended up by taking photographs and having a little book, which was like a mini version of Spotlight, where we would, halfway through the series, we would turn the pages and say, well, he would be, I mean, that kind of face looks the sort of face, I mean, a bit villainous or laughing boy, banking type, whatever. We'd say that face looks right. Now, if we rip the moustache off and maybe put a beard on and take the blue eyes out and, you know, put much darker eyes in or whatever, we used to revamp in that way too. We would take a revamp character and subtly alter it by altering the eyes, eyebrows, moustache, beard, and so on. So there was always a lot of work to do building these new characters.
By December 1964, it was time for Gerry's almost annual tradition of taking the first episode of his new series to show to Lou Grade. His unexpected response to what he saw would present massive challenges to the future of Thunderbirds, but also helped to ensure its longevity.
The series was commissioned by Lou as a half-hour series. When episode 1 was completed, it took this long for him to see, and I sat next to him. We were alone in the theatre.
We're not going to make it. We're running out of runway.
And the lights went up, and he leapt out of his chair. I mean, I thought he'd gone bananas. He just leapt out of his chair, and he turned on me. He pointed at the blank screen. He said, "This is not a television series. This is a feature film. I mean, you've got to make this as an hour." Well, now, of course, I was pleased, but also filled with terror. Here was this big machine rolling, and the guy says, "You've got to make it an hour."
Boys, I think we're in business.
Lou always worked on the basis that if he asked me to do something, somehow or other I would turn myself inside out and do it. And most of the time that proved to be correct.
With 9 episodes already completed, plus 2 more in production, Lou Grade's decision would require a drastic overhaul to the setup at AP Films going forward if they were going to be able to keep up with his demands.
I went back to the studio and said, "Look, we've got to make hours, panic stations to add material, script material, for the first 9, and then at a given point we would switch back to episode 1 and pick up the additional 30 minutes of material for each episode." It used to take 10 days to shoot a half-an-hour episode, so guess what it took to shoot an hour episode? It took 20 days, 4 weeks.
And it wasn't only Lou Grade putting pressure on AP Films.
The Americans were anxious to sell the show and get it on air quickly, because obviously it was a lot of money going out, and if shows were going on air, then money was coming back in. As a result, of course, we had to do computations, you know, to work out how many shows they would have to have in stock before they could transmit 1 a week, and we would have the last episode ready in time to go on the air. And the New York office insisted that they had to have 1 show a fortnight.
It had been the simplest of things for Lou Grade to say that each episode had to double its length, but little did he realise that this would also involve doubling up most of the AP Film Studio machine in order to get the series finished on time.
We had to double up pretty well everything. It was at the point when Lou had said they've got to be an hour, followed by New York saying, but we've still got to have 1 every 2 weeks, that we then had to make a full set of replica puppets. We had to replicate some of the major special effects models, and of course you can't have 2 units shooting on the same stage. Apart from the fact there's not enough room, the light from one set would spill onto the other. One set of directions would be heard by the other crew. I mean, we had to have separate stages. And so we virtually doubled up on the puppets, doubled up on a lot of the sets. We would have taken on more people, doubled up on stages, crews, cameras. And then, of course, we had to build that much more in the time. So we had to reinforce set construction, property making, dirtying down, and indeed right the way through, writers. Everything went at twice the speed.
Despite the race to get the shows produced, the longer length of the episodes allowed for something that Gerry later felt was one of the reasons behind the enduring appeal of Thunderbirds.
If you've got more time, you can obviously devote more time to character development. If you take a character and put that character in jeopardy, an audience will either sit on the edge of their seat, filled with concern, or they won't be the least bit interested, depending on how well you have set that character up in the first place. And so suddenly we were able to take a bunch of new characters, make them interesting, make them likable.
Okay, let's go see this store.
But how do we get there?
That way, Blanche. Follow that sign to the monorail.
And at a point where we felt the kids knew enough about these characters and had gotten to like them, that is where disaster would strike.
Joe, look!
Place is on fire. They've shut us in. Open this door!
And then, of course, it became desperately important to the kiddies that they should be rescued.
I can't hold out much longer, Joe. Oh, Joe, why don't they come?
Who, Blanche? Who? Don't you see? No one can get us out of this now.
And so, in a way, I've always felt that part of the success of Thunderbirds was the fact that it was an hour as opposed to a half an hour, because it enabled us to give the characters much more development than we were able to do on previous shows.
Today, more than 50 years after the series first appeared on our screens, Thunderbirds is often regarded as the pinnacle of Gerry Anderson's television and film career, but it certainly wasn't produced with that goal in mind.
If you think about it, the whole process was, Twizzle Torture was that much more advanced. Four Feather Falls, another advanced supercar, Fireball XL5 with effects, Stingray with colour in the new studio, and now, the new studio we were in, where everything was up and running, everything was working well. It was another big step forward, but I think what happened was that the steps we were taking forward were becoming bigger and bigger steps. I didn't consciously say this is going to be the biggest series we're ever going to make. It was simply going to be, and this one is going to be bigger and better than the last.
Back in 1965, Thunderbirds really was the biggest production AP Films had yet created, and one of the most spectacular shows that had ever appeared on television. Today, more than 50 years later, the show is still just as spectacular and just as popular, and it's all thanks to the hard work and dedication of Gerry Anderson, and Sylvia Anderson, and Derek Meddings, and Reg Hill, Barry Gray, John Reed, Bob Bell, Alan Patillo, Christine Glanville, and the dozens of talented artists and technicians that not only brought Thunderbirds to life, but made it into a television phenomenon that has endured for over half a century and will surely continue to delight and enthrall audiences young and old for many more years to come.
How lovely.
I think it was FAB, Richard.
Yes, I think you might be right, Jamie. Yeah, it certainly was. That was great. Well done, Chris. Well done.
Yeah, and so nice to hear. Now, that was a part of the recordings done by Simon Archer, the late Simon Archer, who was Dad's first biographer. Simon, a chap who I was very fond of, and I remember those recordings taking place.
Oh, wow.
And going in and, being shooed out. And like, no, we're doing a recording. You can't, It was never supposed to be broadcast. It was just for Simon's use and for the lecture tour and for the biography and all these stories coming out. And just so nice to have. We're very lucky to have that. And I've got, I think, upwards of 12 hours of those tapes.
Great.
which we've got access to. So it may be that in the future, possibly we could do something with
for the 200th podcast,
the 1000th, the complete Gerry Anderson story as told by Gerry Anderson himself.
Wow.
The quality's not great, but if you'd like to see that, or hear that rather, Podsterons, do email us, podcast@gerryanderson.co.uk, or tweet us.
Yes.
But I'm not going to give you the details because it feels weird saying.
Oh, well, it's easy. You just hashtag us Gerry Anderson Podcast, or you tag him, I'm Jamie Anderson, or me, Richard N. James. Now, Jamie, there must be a certain amount of sort of cognitive dissonance going on when you hear stuff like that, because who do you hear? Do you hear Gerry Anderson TV producer, or do you hear Gerry Anderson your dad? That's odd, isn't it?
I think I may have said this before, but it's weird. It's like a third version.
Yeah.
It's very odd. It's like a disconnected, because of the, the proximity and stuff. I think my brain has somehow gone, okay, well, we'll put Dad to one side, and it's not, some iconic mythical producer, because I knew him very well.
Yeah.
So it becomes this sort of third voice. It's very strange, but it is really nice to hear.
Of course it is.
And in those tapes, there's occasional bits where I do interrupt and get told off, and it's very
just like
strange.
Doing the podcast,
Yeah, all right,
changes.
Richard. All right, shut up now. It's but it's just nice hearing my younger self interacting with Dad.
Yes.
So very strange. But I hear lots of ways he speaks and things he says, and when he's reaching for a certain word or little vocal ticks, and I'm like, oh, I do that as well. Sort of turning into my father in many ways.
Well, we all are. That's nice. I quite like that. That's nice. Right, it's time to hear some more lovely listeners. These are audio files that people have been sending in to podcast@gerryanderson.co.uk. Let's hear from Paul, Abby and Stephen.
Hello, Jamie and Richard. It's Podsteron Paul Wright here. I just thought I would send in a little voice message to say thank you very much for the last 100 episodes of the Gerry Anderson Podcast. I've listened to it right from the episode 1 and I've loved every single one of them. The interviews have been fantastic, the content has been amazing. Sorry Richard, but I do love FAB Facts. But the best thing it has spawned is the Podsterons Facebook page. It is an amazing group of people who have got together, united by their love of all stuff Anderson. It is one of the best places to be on the internet, one of the safest places to be on the internet, and I love every one of them. So as a little treat, I thought I would record a couple of limericks for you. So here goes. There is a podcast with Richard and Jamie. Anderson stuff they talk about mainly, but I never know whose, Newsy News, is the best and is going to entertain me. There is a podcast with Richard and Jamie, which they feared was getting a bit samey. FAB Facts came and went, Podsteron's anger did vent, and now they are going to remainy. Thanks again for putting this podcast out every week, and I look forward to listening to the next 100.
Hi, this is Abby Svensson. So the Gerry Anderson Podcast means to me a massive family. That's family that are across the waves, family that are closer by, people that I've not met physically before, people that I've just met at the con. And it also means a rich history, both in the old series that Gerry Anderson produced and the new series that are currently in production. There's always something new to discover. There's always something to enjoy and to pass on and share. And the podcast has just really helped to facilitate that for me. My hopes for the future of the podcast is plenty of meetups, lots of support from people, and just a continuation of the family. FAB, SIG, PWOR.
Hi, Jamie, Richard and Chris. I've listened to every podcast from the first, including the preview, and it's something I look forward to every week. I was there as an excited kid when Thunderbirds first launched into the sky and was an avid watcher of all things Anderson until UFO, after which it became a bit more sporadic. The podcast reminds me why I love them all so much, turns many of those end title names into flesh and blood people, and provides FAB Facts. What more could a fan ask for? Here's to the next 100, with big gratitude, Stephen Watson, aka the Podsteron.
Thank you very much. Lovely.
Gosh.
Yes.
What a jam-packed #Pod100 this is.
Isn't it? It really is, isn't it? Just so nice to hear from our listeners as well, because, frankly, usually it's just the two of us, isn't it?
Yes, just chatting to each other and staring each other over FaceTime. And,
so it's nice to have some other voices, I think. So thank you for sending them in. Very nice. Don't stop.
It is. Thank you all. No, please don't stop. Now, if you did enjoy that Thunderbirds feature, by the way, please do share the fact you enjoyed it on social media. post with the hashtag Pod100 and post a link to it so other people can hear it and make sure they know what a marvellous job Chris Dale did on that Genesis of Thunderbirds piece, because I think it's quite special and more people should hear it.
Yeah, I agree, absolutely. Now, talking of things that are quite special, I think it's time I revealed the winner for the current and probably final Plot of Peril.
Oh, okay then.
Right, let's have a listen back to the 3 things that I gave you way back in Pod 95. Are you ready? Here comes your character. Oh, it's Thunderbirds Tintin.
Oh.
Right. Okay. A location? Yeah. Oh, it's the Big Pit Mine. That's the museum near you, isn't it, Jamie?
That is the Welsh Museum of Coal Mining. How strange that should come up.
Right, there you go. The Big Pit
Museum
in Wales is your location. And finally, then, your household item. Yeah. A garlic press. So there were your 3 items, and I asked you to weave them into a coherent Gerry Anderson-esque plot. And of course, we had some entries. Tom Hodden, for example, got in touch to say. Now, he's written something of a script here. Let's see if I can perform this. Hello, Prime Minister. Tom Hodden from the Garlic Press here. Are you going to give us a full statement on the events at the Big Pit Colliery? No comment. Then will you assure the readers of the Garlic Press that there was not severe leakage from other shows into the Gerry Anderson domain? No, there was a very minor leak and no threat to the good citizens of Wales. What Prime Minister do you say to the hundreds of reports of giant maggots around the pit? A tactical strike by the Angels eliminated those. Like I said, it was a very minor leak. Giant maggots, Daleks, some Cybermen, and now we have reports of a soup dragon, Prime Minister. And the Angels contained and destroyed the leak without issue. The threat has been contained. But Prime Minister, no more questions, thank you. That's from Tom Hodden. Expertly delivered by my good self.
I mean, beautifully.
3 years at
It
drama
was great
school.
already, but you elevated it to new lows.
Simpsons Clips 24 over on Twitter. Roving reporter SC24 here with my Gerry Anderson podcast, Plot of Peril. I'm at the Big Pit in Wales, where I'm told that Tintin is about to rescue a couple of miners trapped in the depths, armed only with a garlic press to crush the coal surrounding them. Angus Dusk got in touch. Tintin Cairano has been granted leave from Tracy Island with longtime lover Alan. The pair travel to England in a tiger moth and are staying with Lady Penelope. They decide to visit the Big Pit Mine, where they encounter the Hood, who kidnaps them and threatens to crush them in a garlic press. Luckily, before the Hood can crush them, Alan, Lady Penelope and Tintin team up to take down the Hood. And finally, Simon Allen, of course. Who else? Plot of Peril. Tintin is being shown around the Big Pit Museum by its owner, Brad. She is undercover as a reporter for the Garlic Press. They are both in a lift descending into the pit when the mechanism jams. Tintin suggests calling International Rescue, and soon Thunderbird 2 has them in its claw while Scott frees the car. Tintin is reunited with Snowy and Captain Haddock whilst the Thompson twins perform You Take Me Up in the background. I did say it was from Simon Allen.
Of course. You didn't specify which Tintin. As you did say Thunderbirds Tintin, so I feel like he's broken the rules there.
Well, there we are. Now listen, I'm not going to get into that. All I can say is, I think you're all winners, and if you all want to email your address to podcast@gerryanderson.co.uk, I will send all 4 of you, that's Simon Allen, Angus Dusk, Simpsons Clips, and Tom Hodden, a little something to say thank you.
Oh, Richard.
That's its 100th. There you go.
That's so sweet of you, isn't it?
Yeah, so that's the Plot of Peril. Over, done, finished with.
Yes. The Plot of Peril is no more. I think it's probably time for the plot device to go to the recycling centre.
Well, when it's open.
Well, they are reopening shortly, I believe.
Oh, fine,
so,
okay, I'll keep my eye on the local garlic press.
Yeah, 2 gags about the garlic press. Goodness
I know,
me.
terrible.
Yeah, predictable listeners, but we love you. Thank you, Podsterons. Okay, we are rapidly approaching this going on for too long. So,
really? Okay.
Shall we welcome in His Royal Highness?
All hail.
Commander Sir Christopher General Randomiser Field Marshal Dale.
All hail the Dale.
All hail the Dale, absolutely. There's the new hashtag. Chris, please come and save us with some normality in the Randomiser.
Oh, hello everyone. Well, 100 instalments of the Gerry Anderson Podcast. Who would have thought it? certainly not me. Anyway, you've already heard me more than enough for 1 week, but Marina here would like to say something to mark this important occasion. Unfortunately, she can't, so instead, she's going to get to press the button today. And she looks quite happy about this selection. So Marina, what have we got today? Oh. Well, obviously anything would be an improvement after last week, even watching paint dry, but I think she's made an excellent choice for Pod 100. Here's Thunderbirds with the Cham Cham. What is a Cham Cham, Marina? So we're finally back with Thunderbirds. It's been a while since we were last here, and ironically, for the biggest and most successful Anderson series, Thunderbirds is the one that's seems to be taking the longest time to turn up on the randomizer, but here it is, appropriately enough for Pod 100, and this is an episode that I really like, and I've always really liked this one, and I think this is a favourite of a lot of people. It's not like the absolute greatest, but it is something really different, and unlike certain other times Thunderbirds did something really different, this actually works pretty well, because it's a nice blending of the sort of military stuff, as you can tell by the music. We are at an Air Force base right now, with the sort of spy stuff. It's not so heavily spy skewed as the show often was around near the end of season 1. Anyway, lovely model of this Air Force plane rolling out.
All security systems are operational, sir. There shouldn't be a thing to worry about.
Yeah, that's what we thought last time. We were wrong.
It's probably not a good omen that the equally ill-fated Red Arrow from Edge of Impact was parked at the edge of the runway there. But I do love this Air Force bomber, fighter, cargo plane, whatever it is, model, which I think was repurposed into the bomber that Blue and Oki use in Flight to Atlantica. I could be wrong.
Hitchens, have the crew been given their sealed orders yet?
Yes, sir. They should be opening them about now.
And of course, the officers in this control tower, they're on the same control tower interior set as
we know where we got to deliver the goods to
London Airport, which was always another sort of recurring thing in Thunderbirds, and then also throughout Scarlet Joe and Secret Service. If you have a scene in a control tower, it is always the same control tower.
The only danger in this operation could arise if an enemy were to find out where your aircraft is at any given time.
I love that line. The only way things could go wrong is if things somehow went wrong.
Is that clear?
Perfectly, sir.
Break silence.
We'll be dead in 5 minutes anyway, so you'll probably get your wish.
I'll sure be glad when we've delivered this little cargo.
Yay! Unidentified rockets, missiles. Poseidon missile. Oh.
Radio Maxwell is proud to bring back to the microphone here at Paradise Peaks the Cass Carnaby 5 with a great hit number currently topping the international chart, The Dangerous Game.
Yeah, because a military flight would be listening to the local music station just as they were taking off on a secret mission, but we'll let it go for the sake of the story. Also, it is such a wonderful tune. They're even listening to it on Tracy Island. It's distracting Jeff and Scott from their looking at map time. Must be serious if they're getting distracted from their maps. Gordon's listening to it in Tintin's room, or vice versa. I don't know whose room that is. Virgil randomly comes in. Even he knows not to interrupt the music. Okay. Even on Thunderbird 5, everyone's listening to this music. Although it must get distracting trying to listen to music with all the chatter of the other radio signals the station's picking up.
Gee, I hope Tintin's listening. She really digs this number.
Yeah, it's great.
I'm still in the show. This is a surprise.
Central Control, this is RTL2 calling Central Control. We are under attack. 3 fighters with some kind of oval markings.
It's lovely. This model is lovely on its own, but seeing it get blasted and exploded and going down in flames, oh, it looks so pretty.
Hitchens, you got a fix?
Yes, sir. The relief aircraft are on their way.
That is stock footage of air-sea rescue are on their way, sir.
It's the third time this has happened, Shiloh. The third time.
How many times has that happened, sir? Oh, the whole tail section is on fire. That is gorgeous. And presumably that's it for those poor pilots.
I wonder if it was a coincidence.
What are you talking about, Alan?
It's that tune, Dangerous Game. Just before the transporter crashed, they were playing it on Radio Maxwell.
Well, so what? What's unusual about that?
You think it's not a good tune, huh? You're a commie spy, huh? I'll break your face if you say that's not a good tune. I love Scott Sutton's sort of defensiveness about this song.
What are you getting at, Alan?
Well, Dad, it's simply that each time these transporter planes have been attacked, the Cass Carnaby 5 have been giving a live performance of their number.
Live? That was pretty observant of you.
But surely the Cascani...
Oh, Alan's got a little watch hanging from his belt. I've never noticed that before.
Could be a connection, you know. Where are they now?
Right now they're doing a season at Paradise Peaks.
Brains is reading a science magazine just named Science.
What do you think, Brains?
It's certainly an interesting observation that Alan has made. I'll get John in the satellite to radio us a recording of that Cass Carnaby broadcast and see what I make of it.
Who? Oh, John, the other one. Yeah, okay.
And I know just who to send there.
So it's over to Creighton Ward Manor, and I may have mentioned before, I'm not a huge Lady Penelope fan, but I love the way she's used in this. And I love this establishing shot of her in the garden on the gazebo with puppet butterflies flapping around the place. That is such a simple idea, but it does so much to bring the garden to life.
I was just wondering, in fact, if I might have the rest of the afternoon off. I thought I might take Cook out for a punt.
Why, certainly, Parker. You deserve a break.
Thank you, milady. I'll just go and change into something more suitable.
So Parker's going to put the moves on Lil. Presumably it's the same Cook we saw in Vault of Death.
Hello, Penny. Jeff here.
Why,
he's a smoothie.
What a pleasant surprise.
Penny? I'm organizing an investigation into the crashing of these rocket transporters, and I require your assistance.
I see.
This is one of those times where it's...
I want you to go to Switzerland, to the Paradise...
International Rescue get involved on a sort of very vague basis. I get that someone needs to investigate, but it's kind of not really in keeping with International Rescue's line of work. And very often Jeff would say, no, we can't get involved unless someone's in danger. Oh, Parker.
Oh, yes. When Cook sees me in this gear, she'll be like putty in me hands.
Oh, is this a long-term plan, Parker, you've had to get with Lil? You can do better, mate. I think you can really do better.
Very good, milady. What sort of business will it be this time?
Show business, Parker. I believe you have connections in the theatre world.
Oh, yes, milady. Excellent connections.
Wanda Lamour. Now, who the heck's Wanda Lamour, anyway?
She's by way of being a very provocative talk singer.
Look, Nosy, I'd really love to do you a favor, just for old time's sake, but I run a big agency here. I can't.
So this talent agent, Maxie, has got...
Hello? Now that...
He's clearly an old associate of Parker's.
Because I was in the States last week, and I was only saying to Punchy Patterson...
Huh?
But on the wall he has got...
I thought he was inside.
Photos of lots of recurring Thunderbirds guest puppets. There's the Duchess of Royston, there's the director guy from Martian Invasion, there's a puppet who's already appeared in this episode. He was one of the Control Tower staff. I think he went on to be Hooper in Atlantic Inferno. So I would imagine that a lot of these are the photos that the AP Films team were using to pick out guest puppets to appear in episodes, as hopefully Mr. Anderson mentioned earlier in this very fine instalment of the Gerry Anderson Podcast.
And you keep your mouth shut. Okay, then. What's this Wanda Lamour like? Is she blonde or brunette?
So considering it's a rush job, Penelope has apparently had time to commission a painting of herself as a singer.
Good. I think that ought to do the trick.
Meanwhile, Parker...
Oh, beg pardon, miss, but I was looking for her ladyship.
...has learned how to humour people.
So you didn't recognize me? Well, it
You
looks...
thought a random young lady had wandered into the mansion unnoticed.
Well, they say that if you go down well at Paradise Peaks, you'll go down well anywhere.
Well,
We need to cut to a shot of Kenneth Williams or Charles Hawtrey or someone from the Carry-Ons going, "Oh, at that." Unfortunately, I can't do it on audio because it's a very visual image. So Tintin's off on an adventure as well.
Tin, you're clear to go.
In her Ladybird jet, which only appeared, I think, a couple of times. You live on Tracy Island, get your own personal jet. I wonder if everyone's got one. Does Kirano have one? Does Grandma have one?
You see, Alan, repeated melodic patterns from the Cass Carnaby group could be used to impede the efficiency of the aircraft.
But Brains, the transporters each time reported they were under attack. It was the fighters that shot them down.
True, but perhaps the music was affecting their ability to retaliate. However, I agree with you that there could be something in the music.
I also like this side of the story as well. Brains and to a lesser extent Alan carrying out a technical investigation at the same time as Penelope and Tintin are carrying out an actual investigation at Paradise Peaks Hotel. And we're on our way there now by cable car, and it's so lovely. And the music is wonderful. And considering it was probably a very small model, the line of very small trees in front of the hotel make it look so much bigger than it probably was. And this cable car is lovely. This is just such a pretty episode. Now that receptionist at Paradise Peaks, he looks like the Maxi puppet who we just saw a little while ago. I'm sure it's not, but it looks very similar. Anyway, we're in the lounge at Paradise Peaks. And who else is here? Well, a lot of people are here, a lot of familiar faces, but Cass Carnaby 5, there they are. There's Cass himself, very smooth on the piano. And the rest of the band.
I just can't believe they've got anything to do with the sabotage business. I can't.
No, because they're pretty. The drummer! Oh, I love the drummer. He's got a bit of the Stu Dapples look about him, and the movements of these puppets playing the instruments aren't 100% convincing. The bass doesn't seem to have any strings. At least I'm watching this in standard definition. Maybe it does, and the picture quality is just too bad. But if it does have strings, the puppet certainly isn't working them. But somehow it doesn't matter because the puppets are so caricatured that the movements don't have to match precisely what the instruments are doing. And I really like the look of all the puppets in the band, and I don't remember too many of them reappearing again after this.
Isn't he gorgeous?
Careful, Tintin, careful. Keep it together, girl.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to say hello to our next guest star here at the Peaks. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you...
Miss Piggy.
Oh, what a surprise!
Oh, and now it's snowing, because of course it's snowing. Because I said it couldn't get any prettier.
It was real nice of you to come round and see me like this. When did you get here?
Just today. I came with Miss Lamour.
Oh, yeah. Miss Lamour. The lady with a frog in her throat.
I must have heard Dangerous Game 1,000,000 times, but it still knocks me cold every time I hear it, Mr. Carnaby.
Oh, me too. It's a fantastic piece of music.
You're a bit of a knockout yourself, too, you know.
Oh.
And I wish you'd call me Cass.
Right.
Oh, Ray Barrett is doing so smooth with this.
Tired of playing that tune. Don't you sometimes...
I also wonder why Cass has got a framed photo of the Duchess of Royston on his wall.
That to Mr. Olson.
Yeah, well...
Is that his mother? Is that his grandmother? Whoever it's meant to be, she is downstairs in the hotel watching the show, so, it could be his mother.
So Mr. Olson's your musical arranger?
Yeah. Funny guy, but he sure knows the business.
Funny? In what way?
Well, maybe temperamental would be a better word for it. You know, sometimes he'll make a last-minute change just before we go on the air. I tell you, it drives us crazy. Still, like I say, he knows the business.
Now we have a scene on the dance floor. I mean, how many episodes have a scene on the dance floor? He's even got that glitter ball over the...
Around, you know. High society keeps me pretty busy.
Yeah, that figures. But you're still a lady of mystery.
There's Duchess Royston again.
Everything and nothing.
Ooh, Penelope.
Oh, that's enough about me.
I'm a desperate woman. All I have left now is my dancing.
What else have you heard?
That you also are a mystery. Tell me, Mr. Olsen, what is your secret?
Of my success or of my good looks?
Both, Mr. Olsen. Both.
Plenty of beauty sleep, Miss Lamore. And I'm afraid that's my cue to excuse myself from your very charming company.
Oh, so soon?
So, something up with Mr. Olsen. He's a bit suspicious.
Psst, lady.
Why, Parker?
Someone who's not at all suspicious.
I've got a job as part-time bouncer, lady. I might be more useful to you up here.
Oh, he's such a good
No,
head.
Parker, we seem to be having very little success. How I would enjoy one of your splendid cups of tea.
Very good, lady. I'll fetch you some up at once.
Oh, I love how faithful Parker is to Penelope. And to everybody, really.
I did overhear your Mr. Holson talking to Benito, the head waiter. He was saying something about expecting a message tomorrow morning.
I wonder what he meant by that. Well, it sounds interesting. Where does Olsen live, Parker?
In a chalet, round the other side of the mountain.
Considering he's only been here about 5 minutes, Parker's got more done than Penelope and Tintin combined at this point.
I'm a fake. Right. Let's report it to Mr. Tracy.
But it is nice to have a sort of mostly girls-only outing for this trip.
International rescue. Calling international rescue.
I suppose it's a shame they couldn't bring Grandma along, but there we go. Those apple pies won't bake themselves. Brayman! Brayman sat in the corner of the room.
Well, Mr. Tracy, I've definitely established that there's some kind of electronic pattern in the music.
You mean the music was really used as a code?
Well, it looks quite likely, but I've still got to decode the music before I'm sure there's a code in it, if you see what I mean. Laboratory.
Okay, hands up who has always heard that as lavatory, L-A-V. I have. I know a lot of other people have as well.
Ranger could be the man we're looking for. The thing we don't know is whether he is working alone or whether all the group are involved.
And if the episode couldn't get even more beautiful, it's now time to go skiing. And this setup is on a similar principle to the rolling roads, runways from which the model aircraft would take off from. Just have a rolling, snowy patch of ground for Penelope and Tintin to ski across. And some lovely, pretty supercar music, all building up to this gorgeous shot of them skiing down the hill. Which, I mean, they don't hold on it for too long. Probably wisely, because you can just about see that the depth of field isn't quite there. But just in that split second, oh, it looks so good. So right now in Mr. Olsen's chalet, he's got a gazelle model on the table. We know who likes gazelles. Ooh, he also has a very funky-looking computer. So Penelope and Tintin have arrived just in time to see him sit down at the...
What's that machine he's working at? I don't know. Some kind of electronic computer.
Oh, thanks, Tintin. That narrows it down. Yeah, it's 3 screens, lots of flashing lights, and coloured keys that he's bashing. Tintin's going to take some pictures of this. So as Olsen plays his tune, the hieroglyphy type characters on the screen have been replaced with a secret message telling him to blow up another rocket transporter at 2 o'clock.
Come on, we've got to warn Jeff.
And there are publicity photos taken of Tintin and Penelope inside the chalet, which I would have to presume are not a deleted scene. They just thought it looked good. the girls are skiing away.
Give me Benito, quickly.
Oui, monsieur.
Hello? I see.
Oh, I know.
Well, Parker's overheard that little bit of sinisterness. And of course, skiing uphill is a bit harder than skiing downhill. I mean, I don't have too much experience in skiing. I once did one of those indoor ski courses and crashed over a fence. But Penelope and Tintin have been fitted with ski thrusts, which I don't know how practical those are, because they're just jets of air that they attach to their backs. I would have thought that would be more inclined to knock you over than help you get up the hill, but there we go. I am not brains. So Benito, head waiter, is here to snipe at the girls, but luckily, good old Parker hid in the back of his car, which is an impressive feat considering there's no...
What is going on up there?
There's no roof on the car.
That's Parker. Oh my goodness.
And even though I'm not a fan of this kind of physical comedy in the Super Mario Nation shows, I mean,
They appear to be heading
this image of Parker and Benito falling down a hill and turning into a snowball, it's very sort of Fireball XL5-y, especially with the wah 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 music. Something about that kind of stuff in this episode just works.
Oh, I must apologise for the...
Because it is so...
entrance, milady.
Atypical.
To apprehend him somehow.
And I think the setting, the mountain resort setting, lends it a sort of...
I'm afraid the masquerade is over.
An air of whimsy that somehow makes stuff like this work.
Dispose of you and Miss Tintin.
Of course, we get a better example of that later in the episode.
They know we're on to their little game. We must get back to the hotel and contact Jeff Tracy. And we'll have to hide him away somewhere.
Yes, I think the broom cupboard's the best place for him, miss. Out of sight, out of mind, as the saying goes.
He can host CBBC, milady.
We'll be a long way from here.
Of course, we'll have to give him a puppet.
Jeff, urgent news. We've traced the men who've been sabotaging the transporter planes.
Good work, Benny. Brains, are you there? I want you up here right away.
I'm on my way. Oh, of course. Why didn't I think of it before? It's a cham-cham.
A cham-cham?
What's a cham-cham, Brains?
A cham-cham is a new electronic machine that is sensitive to ultrasonic harmonics and microtones. Oh, of course.
For the longest time as a kid, I thought a cham-cham was actually a real thing. And I get that it is just basically another name for a computer that decodes things. But also, I remember this scene was actually the first clip I ever saw of this episode, because I think...
Yes, sir.
When the BBC...
Got to save that next transporter aircraft.
...repeated the series, or for the first time the BBC showed the series in 91 into 92, I think that clip of It's a Cham-Cham turned up on one of the Saturday Morning Kids TV shows. I want to say something like Going Live or Live and Kicking.
You know that international...
Before the episode itself had actually been shown on BBC Two.
We paid attention to every nut who telephoned in to say he was international rescue. We'd never get any work done.
So that's interesting.
Washington seems to think they were the real thing.
If you redefine the definition of the word interesting to mean something else.
Stock of the U.S. Air Force, just because some kook wants to play musical chairs. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
No musical chairs today, sir. Oh, he looks so sad.
Well, from here on in, it's up to Penelope and Tintin. Only they can save that aircraft from destruction.
Oh, I was expecting him to say, well, from now on it's all up to Penelope. It's nice they remembered Tintin for a change. Considering that this is probably the last time Tintin gets to play any sort of major role in the series. Until Thunderbirds 6, really.
Let's try to tune this way tonight. There's just a few minor modifications.
But, Mr. Olson, I don't see what the point is.
Look, Cass, never mind the objections. Now, you'd better let the other fellas know. You're on in 5 minutes.
Thanks, Mr. Olson.
Oh, but who was hiding behind the dresser? Who was listening in?
Cass, if you must alter the arrangement, you must change it to our way.
Look, Tintin, believe me, if you ask me to play dangerous game on 3/4 time, I'd do it. But I'd still want to know why.
Cass, don't let's go into that again. I can't tell you how I came to be involved in all this. Just trust me, please.
Honey, this season at the Peaks is the biggest break.
I suppose now we're seeing why they didn't send Grandma along, because she wouldn't be able to handle this sort of influencing Cass quite the same way that Tintin can.
All set to go.
Right, Scott.
And I do like the sort of...
it's a desperate step.
The way that Tintin and Penelope are sort of half admitting that they can't, that they're not really who they appear to be, but they can't say what they are, and Cass just kind of accepts it. He's a nice character as Cass. Anyway, Scott's off to Matthews Field to have a word with the naughty base commander who wouldn't listen.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, I am happy to present the Cass Carnaby 5.
Oh, dear. Only Penelope can save us now.
Oh, there's that line.
Mr. Olsen has got to.
So, it's the same crowd of people at in the Paradise Peaks Lounge tonight. Blanche Carter from City of Fire, Duchess of Royston again. One of the officers from the Ocean Pioneer, who appropriately enough looks dead. He's not moving and his eyes look totally grey. Meanwhile, at secret evil foreign base somewhere in foreign land.
Good. Our contact at the hotel has a message for us.
Yes, I am getting a direction on the flight path of the transporter craft.
Oh, and there's that countdown thingy that's probably most famous for later appearing in Crater 101. I love about this episode as well is that it throws up multiple versions of Dangerous Game. And then, of course, there are multiple cover versions because it's such a lovely tune. It really is. And all the Barry Gray sort of jazzy lounge music tracks were lovely, but this is probably got to be the best of the bunch.
When you play that dangerous game, you must learn.
The message is changing.
Learn to watch every glance.
She's done it. She's changing the key and the code.
This is such a clever way to incorporate the Penelope Spy stuff. And as I've said, I was never a huge fan of the James Bond influence that crept in with her, especially towards the end of the series. Episodes like Man from MI5 do very little for me.
I repeat.
Because it's not quite in keeping with the ethos of a rescue organisation. And I get... I get and kind of enjoy the, we've got to maintain security at all costs thing. But I just think seeing Penelope blowing people away left and right, it just doesn't sit right with the show. If she was a separate show, I'd probably have no problem with it. So it's nice that here we have an episode that's, it's using the Penelope Spy stuff, but she's not murdering anybody. For a change.
Parker, look.
Mr. Olsen ain't happy.
Dangerous game.
Right, Virgil. You better get out there to Paradise Peaks. Penelope and Tintin could be in great danger.
Yes, sir.
I probably should have told you to do that earlier, but still, never mind.
This is International Rescue calling Matthews Field Control. A short time ago,
we tried to tell you that your transporter craft was about to be destroyed by enemy fighters, but you would not listen.
What's this all about?
I am now to inform you that we have diverted these fighters and they are about to overfly the outskirts of this airfield.
That must be the 3 unidentified aircraft we just received a report about.
It was such a minor development, I didn't think to tell you about it until now. Ah, there they are. Naughty enemy planes. It's strange that people say, it's those oval markings on those planes. Considering the oval markings are like the smallest part of those planes.
Destroy, yes, sir.
So, International Rescue have done it again.
So, naughty foreign jets presumably shot down. Which only leaves for Penelope, Tintin and Parker to make a sneaky getaway in the cable car.
Good. The 3 of them. Now to make sure they don't interrupt any more broadcasts.
So he was in the cable car winch control room thingy.
That's strange. We've stopped. I can't understand it.
Parker, press the alarm bell.
Yes, milady.
That sounded like the cable car alarm.
I almost didn't hear it over the sound of my own smoothness. I don't know why Cass is the only one who hears the cable car alarm, but luckily he does.
Okay, Father, I get it. We should be sighting the hotel any moment now. The girls and Parker are trapped in the cable car. It seems like Olsen is cutting the cable.
With the world's smallest flame cutter thingy.
Cut that out!
Aw. I love Cass and Olsen struggling with each other on the top of the winch thingy. It's...
You crazy fool, the cables are free! That car will never stop!
What's that?
It's Thunderbird 2.
Hey, just look at that. He's cut the cable.
And now we get one of the most iconic, I think, rescue sequences in the entire series of the show. This runaway cable car. Only slightly spoiled by the fact that the length of cable seems to run like 3 times around the world and then back again because it's just so long.
It's no use. The grabs just won't hold.
Look, Penelope, you're going to have to give us a hand with this. Let me talk to Parker.
And I love all this.
Gee, I hope Parker's got a good head for heights.
I do like it when sort of international rescues equipment isn't quite up to the task and someone has to be brave. And of course it's always Parker because he's such a good egg. I also like as well that we don't actually see Parker's reaction to being asked to do this. Because you just know he would...
Parker, use this.
He would be a bit sort of, oh dear. But he would absolutely do it to save the girls. Because he's just so great as Parker. And it's proof that you don't have to be a highly trained member of a secret organisation to be a hero in the Gerry Anderson universe, which is a nice little message. I would have to guess that the cable car has just passed the 100th mile of its downhill descent. There are some more cables for Parker to attach to the car.
He won't make it in time.
Oh, come on, Parker.
Hurry, Parker. Hurry.
Right, Helen.
Oh, that's it. It's caught the last cable. All attached.
No.
I also love close-up shots of Thunderbird 2 because it looks so big, especially when compared to the little cable car in this. Slowing the car down now, but Parker's still sat on the roof. And there's this little thing called inertia, and another little thing called gravity, and Parker's just had an encounter with them both. Fallen off the front of the cable car.
What could have happened to him?
Look, there he is.
Ah, and he's alright. He's floating down like Mary Poppins because he was using Penelope's umbrella to catch the cables from Thunderbird 2. In any other episode, I would probably detest such a, probably the biggest slap in the face to the laws of physics since the final episode of Fireball XL5 probably. But here, it's just so perfect. It just fits so well. And we're back at Paradise Peaks Hotel. Cass is playing the piano. No one else is around, except for Penelope and Virgil. Even the lights are being turned out now.
Where has Tintin got to? I haven't seen her since the last dance.
Alan and she went out for a breath of air, I think.
And tomorrow she's off home again. Oh, well, that's show business.
I mean, if I were Penelope and Tintin, I wouldn't want to go back to the...
all cut up about going back to the base tomorrow.
The hotel after...
Cass and the fellas.
Only having just escaped from the cable car, but...
Hello, goodbye all the time. And you know, it's always nice to get home again.
That line, I don't know why. It may be the slow pan away with the happy music and the beautiful shot of the moon over the mountains, but that is one of my favourite moments in all of Thunderbirds. And that is one of my favourite episodes in all of Thunderbirds, to be honest. I am so glad I got to see the Cham Cham again, especially after last week's little disaster. What can I say about that? It was so nice. I really like that for once the Penelope spy stuff is integrated with international rescue investigations. I mean, maybe you could make the case that, you know, there isn't much Thunderbirds-y type action in this, but really it's bringing us one of the show's greatest strengths, which is a greater focus on the characters. And of course that tune, Dangerous Game, is as wonderful as all the characters were making it out to be at the beginning. Nice to have Tintin out on a little mission for once. And as I said, for the last time really until Thunderbirds 6, it's just this episode where so many elements that shouldn't really be Thunderbirds-y at all thrown together in one, and the result is something pretty magical. Yep, a huge fan of the Cham Cham, always have been, think I always will be. FAB.
Well.
Yes.
Thunderbirds.
Yes.
How strange that after a Thunderbirds feature and loads of Thunderbirds news, we'd also have a Thunderbirds randomizer. It does tend to happen, although I think we're doing things that humans do of seeing patterns that aren't there.
Yeah, that's true enough. Yes, that's right. What's that called? It's called something, isn't it?
Something.
Positive. No, it's confirmation bias. There
confirmation
you go.
bias.
That's
absolutely.
Right.
That
it's
is
true.
What we're suffering from.
It happened previously, I think, with the Captain Scarlet randomizer episode and Space Precinct as well.
Yeah.
Funny, isn't it? But I do have to assure you, listeners, as you know, it is entirely random. It really is. Yeah, honestly.
So how bizarre.
Yeah.
But thank you, Chris. One of your favourite Thunderbirds episodes there, and hope everybody else enjoyed that as well.
Yeah.
Maybe a perfect time to go back and revisit Thunderbirds on BritBox or Shout Factory or Tubi if you're in the UK or the US, and if not, then go and grab your DVD or Blu-ray set, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, we've got a couple more emails. This one's coming from Sandra Carter to podcast@gerryanderson.co.uk. Hello, Richard and Jamie. Well, hello, Sandra. Congratulations on reaching 100 episodes of your fantastic podcast. As an avid listener to your podcast, I can't wait for Monday. Oh, and Richard's dulcet tones drifting through the ether, delivering the wisdom and humour of your Podsterons. That's nice, isn't it? Even the bad jokes are sometimes funny. Oh.
It's a bit awkward for you.
Yeah. Jamie's okay as well, she says, so that's something, I suppose. Keep up the great work, Richard and Jamie. Just do what you normally do.
More of the same old rubbish, please, is what she's basically saying there.
Pretty much it, isn't it? That's from Sandra. Thanks so much, Sandra. How nice to hear from you. Now, this is Mark Perkins, so I think we've heard from already in audio.
Yeah, we did, right up front, I think.
But here's an email. It's not easy to put into a few words what a difference your podcast has made over the last 100 weeks. Simply put, I suppose it's reconnected me to my past while making a continuing difference to my day-to-day life. I was fortunate to grow up in the golden age of Gerry, with Stingray debuting just before my 6th birthday. I was perfectly placed to immerse my own children in the 90s repeats and now hold weekly remote Thunderbirds watch parties on Skype with newly converted 3- and 5-year-old fans. Your podcast has made me realise how much joy and fun there still is to be had in the worlds of Gerry Anderson. I've even become a massive fan of the previously unseen Secret Service, Deep Joy. I've listened since the beginning and remember the odd feeling I had when you got to Pod 7. This is weird, I thought. We're off into the unknown now. Pod 7. Yes, of course, there were only 6 originally, weren't there? From Thunderbirds 2. I've made some great new friends through the Facebook group and have the 3 of you plus Gerry to thank for all of this. See you at Pod 200. Regards, Mark Perkins. It's nice, isn't it?
That's lovely. Thank you, Mark.
I really like that idea of reconnecting with your past and making new friends through the podcast. That's lovely, isn't it?
Yeah, well, we've seen that, haven't we? When we did Pod 50 at the Space Centre in Leicester, everybody got together for that, and people came from all over the world, in fact, and met each other for the first time in person. It was just such a lovely atmosphere. So thank you, listeners, because, without you, it would just be 3 blokes talking into the ether.
Yes, pretty much. That's right, yeah. Right, it's time to hear from our final 4 files. So let's have a word from Stephen, Dave, Rob, and Lawrence.
This is Stephen Carson from Edinburgh, and I've been a fan of Gerry Anderson all my life. Growing up since the early 60s, Gerry Anderson's shows have always been there, and even when he was not making them, there have been the videos, DVDs, exhibitions, reruns, and more recently new initiatives including Gemini Force 1, Thunderbirds 65, and the mini-episode of Firestorm. Over the last 2 years, it has been great to hear the banter every Monday morning, initially when I was working and now that I have retired. I've been lucky enough occasionally to have an email or two read out by Richard and Jamie. I particularly like the interviews, and despite immersing myself, I still appreciate the occasional nugget. Congratulations on reaching Pod 100. Keep up the good job. I look forward to hearing about all the new initiatives once the current challenges have been addressed. I have one suggestion you may wish to consider. What about on this Fab Day? It would cover some interesting events that happened on the date of the pod release, perhaps birthdays of the cast, characters or crew, premieres of episodes, etc. Keep safe and keep going.
The Gerry Anderson Podcast reminds me of a fantastic time I had growing up as a child and watching Gerry's productions, then going over to England last year and seeing you, Jamie, Richard and Chris at the very first live podcast and meeting so many other like-minded Podsterons, and it was such a marvellous time.
Hi guys, it's Rob Cassidy here. I just wanted to congratulate you all on reaching 100 pods for the Gerry Anderson Podcast. That's quite some achievement, guys. It's quality work always, and we love you for it. 100 pods, though. Can you imagine how long that conveyor belt must be? Jeff Tracy would have to buy an entire island for that. Anyway, he's looking forward to the next 100. You lovely boys.
This is the voice of the Podsterons. We know that you can hear us, Jamie and Richard. We will continue to take our revenge for your unprovoked attack on Joe 90.
Sorry chaps, don't know what quite came over me there. This is Lawrence in Portland, but grew up in Slough, merely a stone's throw away from the old Thunderbirds studios. Just wanted to say thanks for 100 great podcasts. I've enjoyed listening to them from the beginning. And if you don't mind, I just have a strange compulsion to walk down this dark alleyway. I thought I heard a kitty off there. Where we go? Go here, kitty, kitty, kitty.
Wow, thank you all. That's the most audio files we've ever had for a single pod. In fact, I think that might be the most audio files we've had for 10 pods.
Probably, yeah. No, it was really nice. Thank you for answering our call. It's always so nice to hear from you. I am, however, slightly disappointed, Jamie. We've heard from some wonderful people and some listeners who we know and some listeners who we've not heard from before. But who haven't we heard from? Phil Steer.
What?
After all we've done for Phil Steer.
Yes, that's true.
We even named a podcast after him.
We created the Phil Steer podcast just for Phil Steer.
Yeah.
And Phil Steer didn't even bother.
Not a peep.
Thanks, Phil Steer.
Yeah, thanks. We know who our friends are now.
Yeah. Really not Phil Steer. Well, okay, well that's is that the end of hashtag Pod 100?
On that note, I think let's call it a day.
Yeah, well, let's call it the end of Pod 100.
Yeah,
and I think we'll have to start working on Pod 101 next week.
Yes.
Now, next week, we've got Chris Bowden.
Oh, yeah.
Who was one of the producers, he was the producer of Lavender Castle and worked with Dad for a long time, was friends with him for a long time. Chris has some great insights there and some all sorts of stuff about Lavender Castle and working in the industry in general. And after that, we've got the second part of Chris, and then we've got 3 parts with David Tremont from Motor Workshop.
Lovely.
So there is so much to look forward to.
Yes.
As we enter our triple-digit phase.
Yes, that's right.
Of the Gerry Anderson Podcast.
Yeah, if you're listening to this on the day of release, don't forget to join us tonight for something like a Fab Live, as close as we can get, over on the Gerry Anderson Facebook page or YouTube channel, or even Twitch and Periscope at, did we say 6 o'clock?
6 p.m. UK time.
Yes. We'll see you then.
And make sure you go and pre-authorise your Facebook access at streamyard.com/Facebook. And then we'll be able to see your comments and see who you are, because otherwise it just comes up as anonymous user. And that's no good, is it?
No.
Unless that is actually your name.
Yeah, it could well be. Yeah, that'd be odd, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
An anonymous user.
Yeah, must be that.
Yes.
This is getting weird now. I think
Sorry.
we've been talking too long.
It's been too long.
Thank you for listening to Pod 100, to our probably longest podcast ever. We promise to keep it a bit more short and tidy next week.
Yeah.
But we want to do something special. Thank you all for joining us over at least one of the last 100 pods.
Yes, if not all of them.
Yes, and thank you to our lovely team, Richard included, obviously, and
Jamie,
Chris, and Laura, and, well, maybe me. And Ross, and other Chris, and AC, and everyone who is part of the podcast. You're all brilliant. To all of our previous interviewees. And here's to the next 100 or even 1,000 Gerry Anderson podcasts.
Looking forward to it.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Stage 1 complete.
Let's go.
Spectrum is green.
Right, we did it, Richard. 100 podcasts.
I know,
Can you
I feel
believe
a bit. Trouble is, what am I going to do with the rest of the day? It's a bit of an anticlimax now. I've had the best part of the day in the morning.
Yeah, of course. Well, that was when you started drinking, I suppose, and then you had to record the podcast. So
what?
It's downhill.
What are you inferring?
I thought you might have opened a bottle of champagne.
You're
to
inferring I do these
100.
podcasts drunk, aren't you?
No, just for 100.
It would certainly explain something, wouldn't it?
It might do, yes. Yeah. No. Well, we clearly got lots of fans there. It's just lovely. I've really enjoyed getting all those messages and stuff, and it's been marvellous. And actually, do you know what? It made up for us not being able to do our proper 100th at Foxley Manor.
True enough.
And all our proposed stuff that we were going to do if it wasn't for lockdown, but we still managed it anyway.
Yeah, just as special, wasn't it?
Yeah,
and we didn't have to put up with Nick Briggs.
That's true, but we did miss out on Benji Clifford. So.
Oh, yeah, never mind.
Yeah, you win some, you lose some. Okay. Right, well, have a lovely day. Thank you so much.
See you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
You have been listening to the Gerry Anderson Podcast.